Welcome to Game Savers Podcast, everybody. My name is Tony Morris, and today I'm joined by my friend and co-host.
I'm Wayne Donaldson, and I love video games.
And we've got two special guests joining us today, all the way from London, England.
Liam, hey, nice to see everyone. Well, not really seeing you. I mean, you're seeing me, but nice to see you lot. Yeah.
And Aaron, Liam's older brother.
How about that? Two brothers. All right. So we're recording right now out of Ireland, New York, and Northern Ireland. Didn't want to get that wrong, Wayne. Oh my God. and and London, England. So without further ado, what we're here to talk about today is an old game that is a favorite of ours. And when we'd originally come up with the idea for this podcast, one thing we knew that we wanted to do was go back and talk about a game that was near and dear to our hearts, occasionally probably once a month or something like that. And this month, we thought we'd do something along the lines of about 18 years ago. That is Grand Theft Auto Vice City that released on the PlayStation 2. We're going to be talking about that. We'll talk about the story, the characters, all of your favorite times from that, our impressions, how we got into that game, and what that was like at the time. But before we get into that, I want to talk to Aaron and Liam for just a second about what got them into gaming and how they ultimately ended up finding out about this game of all things. So, Liam, why don't you take it away?
Well, we got into gaming. Well, I got into gaming probably from the age of about 4. Yeah, I remember being 4 years old, getting a Sega Mega Drive 2 for my birthday. Yeah, playing Streets of Rage 1 and 2 on there.
Okay.
So that would have been back in the early 90s, 93, 94-ish. That's what really got me into video games from there, and then it spiraled. Sega Mega Drive 2, Nintendo 64, Super Nintendo, and it just exploded from there, really. Thing that led me to Vice City was the long-awaited completion of GTA 3, and I was kind of itching to play another game, and I think State of Emergency came out, which was okay, but then Vice
State
City
of Emergency, what a goodie that was.
Yeah, it was a little gem, but it was sort of just waiting. It was in the kind of the period just waiting for Vice City, which then came out, about, I think, a year later or so. And then, that took over my life for, the next 10 to 15 years, probably. 20, because we're still here talking about it.
Right. How about that? What about you, Aaron?
Well, I'm older than Liam, and we are obviously brothers, so I have a bit of a longer memory of playing video games, and he's involved, actually. I remember my dad cracked open the NES, which we still have, and we were playing the original Super Mario on the NES. And so anyone who doesn't know about the NES, it's the first family Nintendo console, and we had the original Super Mario Brothers. If you do 2-player, player 1 goes as Mario, and when he dies, player 2 gets a crack as Luigi. And me and Liam were swapping. Liam was player 2, and we were just having a go, not really knowing what to do because we were really young at this point. I remember I must have been about 5 or something like that. And Liam was not paying attention when I died, so I grabbed his controller unknowing, and then I was Luigi for a little while. I guess I knew at that point I had a problem. So yeah, just like Liam, I've been playing games since 5 years old, 4 years old, whatever it would have been, and it was downhill from there, really. And in terms of Vice City, it's just the same as Liam. Growing up together, we had the same experience of it. So we were addicted to GTA 3. We'll talk about that later, probably, when we talk about Vice City. But you can't talk about Vice City without talking about GTA 3. But yeah, GTA 3 took over our lives. Secondary school just started for me and Liam, so we're in year 7. That's what you call it in the UK anyway, grade 7, I suppose.
7th grade for us.
Yeah, exactly. So 10, 11 years old. We didn't go to the nicest school, me and Liam, so it was a bit of a sanctuary going to Liberty City in GTA 3, That was our sort of respite, escaping from the real world. And then Vice City came around, and we'll talk about that, I suppose.
Excellent. All right. Well, how about that? So I got to ask, who was player 1 in your household?
Oh, it was always me.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I don't know why I was always naturally player 2. It doesn't really...
The older brother just kind of takes control, right?
That makes sense.
How it is.
I mean, we're not savages here, It makes sense, right?
But
I have to ask, did you both have like first-party controllers?
Not all the time. For the SNES, for the Super Nintendo, we didn't have as player 2 wasn't a first-party controller.
The worst thing about being player 2 in any game, and it was like whenever you went around a friend's house and stuff, is you just got handed this you know, 9.99 piece of crap controller
Mad
that was
Cats.
unresponsive.
Mad Cats, I was gonna say that.
Yeah, it felt awful in your hands, and you're getting your ass kicked in Street Fighter 2,
Yeah.
and you're just sitting going, but how can I win with this thing? It doesn't even fit in my hands.
It's not my skill, it's this controller.
Yeah, that was always my excuse, even with the official controllers. It was always, my analog stick's not working here. Has that happened to you as well?
Yeah.
My X ain't working now. What's going on? Yeah, that was the usual get out of jail free card.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good to hear how you guys got into the game. I guess I'll talk a little bit about how I got into this as well, and you too, Wayne. But I was really young. I can't even remember what grade I was in, but I definitely was not old enough to be buying this game on my own. I know I would have
Oh, none of us were.
rejected in a heartbeat. But I was actually at a friend's house, and I must have been around 10 years old, and his brother had rented the game at a Blockbuster and came home with it that night and was sitting in the basement in his room playing it. And there was like 5 of us as just wee hobbits running around in there watching him play this, running people over, killing pedestrians. I mean, things you had just not really seen on the realistic level like that in a game before. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to play. Of course, we had to watch him do, 40 rampages before any of us got to actually touch the controller. But that's a different story. But that's how I got into it. What about you, Wayne?
I have to confess here, I'm starting to feel a little bit old. I think I'm the only one here that played GTA 3 and Vice City and was actually old enough to play it.
You could have actually gone to the store and bought it.
I think I would have been at university at the time. And yeah, I remember buying it online. I actually even remember where I bought it from. And I remember it arriving. And I mean, I've talked about this before. I'm 100% on the digital bandwagon. But a game like GTA Vice City is the sort of game that I do look back and have really good memories of opening the packet and getting. It wasn't just like the plastic case; it was like a nice cardboard box. You opened it up and there was stickers in it, and there was a big fold-out map and stuff. So while you're sitting waiting for the game to install, you're already getting familiar with this world that you're about to explore.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that. That was just that anticipation of, hurry up and install. I want to get into this world, yeah, that's my memories of picking up, as we say, GTA 3 and Vice City, both of them the same sort of experience.
That's a beautiful thing.
Were you similar to me and Aaron? I don't know if you guys were particularly like this, but especially with the map, it was imperative that it was always kept in the neatest condition, because once you opened it, to try and fold it back to how it was.
Oh, absolutely.
Mine came straight out of the box, blue tack in the corners, and it went up in the wall right beside me. So you're looking at this world, but you're looking over at the map beside you to see where you are, and yeah. I think
that level of OCD followed me into adulthood, because like you were saying, with keeping that map in mint condition, I mean, I wouldn't even like tape that thing to a wall. If I taped it, it was behind it, or if I had to put a pin in it, or a thumbtack, it was literally on the furthest corner of the map possible. So I kept that sucker in mint condition on my wall. And did it do me any good in life? No, but I needed to have that thing there for whatever reason. And do you remember that map actually in GTA Vice City? If you took that and you flipped it around, I guess it depended on which version it was, but it would be a character or something like that as well on the other side of it.
I think it's a poster of one of the bikini girls with palm trees in the background. I think for the PAL version, at least it was. I think, Liam, on the other side of the map.
Holding the martini glass.
Yeah, something like that. So I think it was that. So I think it doubled as a so it doubled as a poster and a map, and we just never enjoyed it up on the wall. We're just like, this needs to be in pristine condition. Even if we don't have to look at it again, no fingerprints, wash your hands before you touch the case. You may look at it with permission, that sort of thing. Yeah, me and Liam are pretty anal about that sort of stuff as well.
That's
it's not just you, Andy. Don't worry, it's not just you.
So this game, I guess, to kind of take everybody back here, and we'll do a quick disclaimer real quick. So nobody was actually harmed in the making of this. And honestly, I think we probably would have started off this podcast with an 80s intro of like A Flock of Seagulls, that song, I Ran,
yeah.
Far Away, And I don't think we're going to do that because we don't want to get sued for copyright. But nonetheless, we'll kind of try to help paint that picture and visualize what this game was like back then for those of you that can recall. So this game was released back in 2002 by Rockstar North, which I'm not even sure if that's a studio anymore, but maybe it's just all part of the Rockstar umbrella now. But this was 2002 on the PlayStation 2 by Rockstar North, and 1 year later ended up coming to the PC and Xbox. It sold 17 million units worldwide year to date. It won a ton of Game of the Year awards from a lot of big companies that are still around too in the gaming world, such as IGN, GameSpot, Golden Joystick Awards, and a lot of others. Some of the other games that came out in 2002 as well, just so everybody can kind of, again, take yourself back there. Splinter Cell, the original Tom Clancy version that came out, that was a thing. Elder Scrolls Morrowind also came out that year. Ratchet and Clank, Super Mario Sunshine, Kingdom Hearts, Metroid Prime, and Warcraft 3. What a year. Wow.
Pretty
That's
good.
incredible.
Yeah, pretty good. I think I remember getting Shenmue for my birthday that year as well. I was
That too.
13, and so we had a Dreamcast, and I remember getting
Yeah.
Shenmue. I think it came out at the end of 2001. I don't know, but 13, 2002, I remember getting that for my birthday, Shenmue, and that was pretty awesome as well.
How
Is that
incredible
when-
is that?
Yeah.
Is that when we were? I think the only thing I did on Shenmue was I always used to play the video game, but go to the arcade as the video game character.
Yeah, you're playing a video game in a video game. I
And you
mean,
go in, you go-
how meta is that?
One game, 100 yen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This game was about, according to howlongtobeat.com, and for those of you that aren't familiar with that, it's basically a site that tracks how long it actually takes to beat the game based on user input. But it took about 29 hours to beat the main story and some extras. That doesn't include the time you spend running over pedestrians and going on rampages and, you know, hitting stunt ramps and things like that in the game, which we'll talk about in a minute. But a lot to this game, and we're going to try to recap all of it and talk about some other memories as well. But Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about the story and, you know, what really that was? I know it was similar to Scarface, Miami Vice, a lot of other influences.
Yeah,
but
it
tell
was
us what
all.
that was.
It was a lot there, you know, derivative of a lot of 80s, 80s TV and movies, Scarface, Vice, Miami Vice, the two main inspirations. But it's not canonical at that point. You don't know about any of the canon with GTA 3. GTA 3, I think, is set in present day, so it would be 2000, 2001, whatever. Vice City is 85, and you play a character called Tommy Vercetti. You don't really know anything about him, and it starts with him getting screwed over in a drug deal gone wrong, essentially. And so he's trying to play catch up. He needs to get this money. He's out for revenge. He needs to get money to recuperate his losses for the drug deal that went wrong. Gangsters are after him. He works for the mafia. So the mafia believe that he has double-crossed them because the drug deal went wrong. So he's a wanted man, and he finds himself in Vice City, which I guess is inspired by Miami. And he attempts to, the plot of the game is to find out what happened. You meet these characters and attempt to reclaim your reputation, your money, save yourself from different gangs that need to kill you for their own gain. And yeah, you meet characters along the way, and the story within Tommy's own world develops as a result. You get to meet Lance, who is your confidant throughout the story. And you get to meet characters like Diaz as well, who, you know, you work for. And like GTA 3, anyone who's familiar with the GTA franchise, they'll know it's essentially mission-based. So you go to different people, they'll give you different missions, different tasks to do, which in themselves develop the story. I suppose that's pretty much it in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, towards the end, obviously things go pretty south. There's a lot of other, you know, twists and betrayals along the way between Lance Vance and Sonny Forelli and some of those other names you may be familiar with. But some of the big characters in here, for those that can recall, Ken Rosenberg, the panicked lawyer. You know, as soon as you get to the first part of the game, you get over that first cutscene, pulls up in front of his office, and you get out of the car and he goes, "I poked my head out of the gutter for 1 freaking second and fate shovels shit in my face." And, you know, they talk for a minute, and then you've got the choice to really like get in a car, get on that little pink moped, and, you know, the world is yours at that point. You can either follow the story or just go on a rampage from the get-go, whatever you want. What did you guys normally do? Did you follow the story right off the beginning, or?
I was obsessional about following the story. I know a lot of people get a lot of fun out of these games by just like going off and, you know, destroying things, but I've just got that like a progression in mind where it's I've got to get through the story, progress the story, find out what's happening with these characters. You know, do all of a character's missions so that I can unlock the next character to see what direction that takes me in. I love that. Obsessed with that.
Yeah, I think I was the same. One thing I do remember doing, and I completed the game a few times, and I did this every single time. I remember first playing it and getting on the little pink, I think it was called a Viaggio. Was it a Viaggio? Was that what it was called?
Something like that.
Yeah, it was like a fake Piaggio, I guess. And I remember getting on that, and it went about 20 miles an hour. And I remember thinking about the front cover of the game, and it had a sports bike on it. and I thought, oh my god, is this literally what you're giving me? This hairdryer to drive around on. And I was like driving around looking for a big motorbike, which obviously came further down the storyline. But yeah, I remember sort of cruising around before I went to the destination, the safe house on Ocean Drive, Ocean Beach, looking for a big motorbike, which never came. Yeah, that's
it would eventually come later. So there was a ton of other characters too. God, and the list just goes on here. But you know, there was Ken Rosenberg. You already had Tommy Vercetti that you're playing as. Lance Vance, the African American male in a big white and purple suit. Really
Yeah.
had that 80s vibe to him.
yeah. The sleeves rolled up.
Yep. You can't forget that. So many others: Juan Cortez, Ricardo Diaz, Kent Paul, the crazy Australian guy, Avery Carrington, the real estate mogul, cowboy hybrid, crazy guy, Umberto Rabina, who owned that weird kitchen that sometimes you would do stuff in on the west side of the map. Auntie Poulet, how can you forget her? The Haitian warlord, criminal mastermind. Steve Scott, Mitch Baker, Phil Cassidy, Mercedes Cortez. The list goes on. There's just such a good cast of characters in this game.
Good.
You can't leave
Oh
out
yeah,
Love
Love
Fist.
Fist.
Love Fist.
Yeah.
Love Fist. Yes. The 80s hair metal parody. Yep.
Yeah. They were the worst. But yet the best.
They were the best. They were so cool.
I've been playing this game like nonstop for the past 2 weeks to get ready for this podcast. And honestly, like listen to this 20 years later, I'm like, you know what, that band rocks. And it's a shame they weren't real. And I might have been the only one that felt that way. But...
No, V-Rock plays some of their music. If you go to V-Rock channel, DJ'd by Laszlo, who people may remember, who was in GTA 3. He was on the Chatterbox radio station in GTA 3, but obviously he started his career DJing for V-Rock radio station. And yeah, Love Fist have some great tunes on that station. It's awesome. And I think they were managed by Kent Paul. I think there's a mission where you have to do a mission for them. I think it's getting them some girls for their recording session or something like that. I can't remember the exact role of the mission.
Was Kent Paul? Was he? I thought he was English. Was he Australian?
No. Kent Paul's English.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. That's my bad. Yeah.
No, he's there you go. The American ear for English accents. No,
which one is it?
Yeah, he's voiced by Danny Dyer, who anyone in Britain will probably know Danny Dyer. But yeah, he voiced Kent Paul.
Wow.
I didn't realize that. I didn't know that was Danny Dyer.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. And there was a lot going on. I mean, what did you guys think about this game when it first came out? Because obviously you played Grand Theft Auto 3. Sounds like all of us have played that pretty extensively. And then this had come out and just, kind of blown the doors off of everything we knew as far as realism and open world maps and, the soundtrack and everything else that was just so essential in this game. What did you guys think about this?
Well, one of the things that I was actually on the back seat about was the 80s setting. Like leading up to it, I wasn't sold on that because I find the 80s a wee bit like too cliched and stuff. And I kind of seen Rockstar as, these groundbreaking video game developers. I always thought there was room for them to do new things and not tread over ground that, people have ideas that people have done so many times before. But literally, 10 or 15 minutes into it, you're just 100% on board. You're just so sold on it. It oozes 80s in a way that I don't think any other game even has to this date. Even though you go back now and it's these, low polygon characters and everything's blocky and horrible looking. The audio was so good, and I don't just mean the music. The music and the quality of the acting meant that you could still get absorbed in it and still believe that it was this world set in the 80s and you have got all these characters living out these stories. I think that was my initial take from it, that this was just so authentic. There was an authenticity that came off it.
I was going to say something actually. I'll speak for myself. Liam probably has the same sort of thing, but we were obsessed, like I said, with GTA 3. And for people probably under the age of 25, it's hard for them to realize, I was saying this to Liam before the show, people under the age of 25, it's hard for people to understand how groundbreaking and earth-moving GTA 3 was for gamers. Sandbox wasn't really a thing, and it revolutionized the way games were made from then on and how people played video games and what people expected from video games. So when people played to depth GTA 3 and Vice City was announced, I think for Wayne saying the 80s thing wasn't really a thing for him, me and Liam were obviously maybe a bit younger than Wayne, so 80s didn't have any sort of nostalgia for us because I was born in 89, Liam in 90s. So it wasn't a thing that we could be sold on, like, oh, remember the 80s, because we don't. So I think for me, at least, I remember seeing the video, the advert, the commercial just before it came out. I think it was the Friday before it was released. So a week before, I remember seeing it on TV, and I saw, you know, the beach and palm trees and motorbikes and helicopters. And I thought, I'm totally sold. I don't care when this is set. Me and him from rainy London, you know, as soon as there's beaches in a video game with palm trees and stuff, you're thinking, all right, I'm there. Because I always saw GTA, the new release of GTA is like going on holiday. You know, you're not just playing a video game, you're escaping to a new world almost, where you're some guy in Liberty City or you're some guy in Vice City now. So I think the allure of the game was it was juxtaposed to Liberty City in GTA 3, which is quite grim, New Yorky, sort of hard-boiled and gritty and a lot of gray, and it's an urban environment. And you compare that to the visuals of Vice City alone, you know, the neon and the pinks and everything like that. And I was sold by that personally. And so I think people don't understand. I think under the age of maybe 25, I don't think they understand just how significant GTA as a franchise was at this point. GTA 3 broke every rule there was. So Vice City, expectations were high, I think, because we knew, right, this is gonna, if not continue it, build on from there. And so there was no way I was never gonna have it. You know, it was just it was a given.
Yeah, I remember specifically about the 80s vibe. The thing that's done it for me was the minute you put the disc in the tray and the sort of soundtracky, when it came on, it was like, and it that sort of like synthy, that sort of synthesizer little beat that they had. And I have been and still am, and was really into music, especially 80s music. And that there, I imagine that was probably original soundtrack as well. It didn't sound like any song that I'd ever heard. And yeah, I remember that just really kind of threw me into the whole 80s vibe of it. And yeah, like Aaron said, given that we were only born 89 and 90, this was a totally different world, man. Yeah, Aaron kind of said it all there. Definitely, I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. This game did such a good job of encapsulating everything that, you know, felt to 80s to me. I mean, I wasn't in the 80s, obviously. I wasn't even born yet. But to me, I mean, if I had been around, I would like to think this is what it would have felt like.
Yeah, exactly.
They nailed so much about those vibes, like you were saying, with the neon, the palm trees, the beach, even the NPCs. They would like run around in bikinis and swim trunks and stuff like that on the boardwalk, or not the boardwalk, but the sidewalks. And even the cars, things like that, it really just nailed that environment for me. And the music, I think, was most important and impacted me the most. I'm not sure when I got turned on to a lot of the tunes on there, but like you were saying on V-Rock, I just find it so weird that, you know, and we'll talk about that here in a bit, what songs were featured on there, what artists there were, but so many of those bands that were on that game, I ended up becoming fans of later in life. And now I've seen them multiple times, some over a dozen times all over the earth. And the fact that game was kind of at the core of some of that, I think, is just so incredible that a game can do that.
I have a bit of a confession when it comes to the music in Vice City. I played it on PC, and when you install the game to your hard drive, you could see a little folder for each radio station. And I'm pretty sure the MP3 files were just sitting in there. You could create another folder and then dump your own MP3s into it.
Yep.
And create your own radio station. So I done that. I just created a folder and threw like every Iron Maiden song in there, every Metallica song, every Motley Crue song, and then I just cruised around Vice City listening to my own music. I kind of regret that in hindsight because, you know, the music and the radio stations are as big a part of as of a GTA game as anything. You know, there's been times in the more recent games where I've literally done a lap of the island just to hear all the humor within the talk radio shows. So I kind of regret that, but at the same time, it was fun to be able to do that. You know, just dump your own music in and away you go.
Speaking of that, were there any things you guys feel like Grand Theft Auto Vice City did that were just astronomical improvements over Grand Theft Auto 3?
Yeah, I'd say
the bikes and the weapons. Sorry,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the biggest one for me was bikes and helicopters, being able to fly.
That was huge.
I remember. I think it was in GTA 3. You could fly. You could fly. Was it a Dodo? I think it was
Yeah.
called, that little like
The
seaplane.
dodo, yep.
And it would only get. I think you'd get like a little stunt bonus because you'd get about 10 feet off the ground, and then you just end up like skidding again. Or what you could do as well, you could get like a tank and you could face the missile projectile backwards, and if you held the trigger backwards you could sort of fly again a little bit but then come back down again. So yeah, and then in obviously Vice City, when you get Diaz's mansion and when you acquire some properties with helipads, and then you could just fly around everywhere. That was a big change up for me, for good and for bad, because it meant firstly you could get anywhere double quick, which was great, but also it made things really difficult when it came to hidden packages and rampages, because you knew in GTA 3 if you saw an alleyway, odds are there'll be a hidden package down there. And now you're flying around thinking, oh, what was that thing? Then you fly back down and you go, oh, is it a hidden package? And it's like a newspaper. So yeah, it was good and bad. I mean, I would take it. I would take the helicopter every time for the sake of seeing a newspaper instead of a hidden package, for definite.
It's funny you said bikes, Wayne, because I was playing this, and one thing I don't recall in GTA 3, obviously there were no bikes, but even the way, like, you didn't just hop on a bike, especially if you hijacked it from a pedestrian or anybody else that was driving for that matter. I guess you can't hijack a pedestrian. They're on foot. You're not taking their shoes. But so if you hopped on that bike and you were jacking it, what would happen is you would either elbow them off and knock them onto the ground viciously, or you could try hijacking it from the front, and your guy would actually like leap over the front of the bike and like kick him off. Like it looked like a WWE move or something, and just completely destroyed these poor dudes. There was also what other improvements were in this game? I know there were so many others. I felt like the physics were huge.
I'll look this up beforehand. The GTA 3 only had 11 weapons, and then the roster of weapons was pushed to 37.
Wow.
So it wasn't just, here's your assault rifle, here's your SMG, here's your shotgun. There was different types of shotguns with, different amounts of power and different, how fast they could reload and all the usual statistics that come along with video game weapons. So it was always fun to get a new weapon. And of course, there's some really, really iconic weapons within Vice City. But would Vice City have been the same game if you didn't have a chainsaw?
I mean, I was going to say that chainsaw.
That was just, I mean, that was a jaw-dropping moment when it was like, the last games were great where I could run around shooting people and punching people and knifing people, but now I've got a chainsaw. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I think they knew how big a thing that was, because they even put it in a cutscene where someone was being chased with a chainsaw in the mission where you got it. So I think they sort of knew how big that was for us.
Yeah, and it's
GTA 3.
It's clearly Scarface, that infamous scene from Scarface with a chainsaw. It's obviously lifted straight from that. Yeah.
I was gonna say I don't know how popular this opinion is. I think graphically GTA 3 might have an edge over Vice City. So I think that having played both on the PlayStation 2 and then the HD, they call them HD remakes, and not really. But yeah, the re-releases for the PlayStation 4, having seen both next to each other, I think GTA 3 probably has an edge in terms of graphics. Maybe, at least in character graphics and character animation. But what I would say is that what Vice City improved on from GTA 3 is not only the environment. It wasn't as homogenous and samey as the GTA 3 environment, which wasn't even that bad. I mean, you compare Portland Island to Shoreside Vale, and they're very different aesthetically, but you can't compare the difference in the actual game of GTA 3 to the difference in environments to Vice City. So I think there was definitely that. I mean, it has a beach. I know I'm going to go on about that, but it has a beach. It's so cool. But also going into buildings was a thing you didn't have in GTA 3. And that's something that I really liked. You could go into the Malibu Club and, see all the people dancing on the dance floor. And so going into buildings was, again, we take it for granted now, but it was such a big thing for a GTA game at that point. And also the helicopter, like Liam said, the helicopter and bike thing, the different modes of transport, I think was something that really was a big improvement from GTA 3. I remember I was saying this again to Liam before the show. We were in school and everyone was in school anticipating leaving school so they could go to the nearby shop to buy the game as soon as school finished. And I remember the day we were all in school anticipating it coming out, and all everyone could talk about was, you can ride a bike. And I thought, dude, you can ride a you can drive a helicopter. That's the craziness of GTA 3. It's like, okay, you can fly around everywhere, but riding a bike is something that it got so much excitement because, okay, you can fly, but you can drive a bike. It's just, you can do wheelies and pick up people and just drive around freely. It's something that is such a subtle change from GTA 3. You can drive a taxi in GTA 3. Now you can drive a taxi or a motorbike. Okay.
Kaufman cabs. Yeah.
Exactly. Kaufman cabs, exactly. But it's just something that the minute details of having a different form of transport still on the road. People weren't even talking about the helicopters. It just showed the anticipation for what the gameplay of GTA is like. You can have fun without doing any missions and just drive around on a bike and just, doing wheelies and getting bonuses for it and end-ons and stuff and drive-bys. You could shoot in front of you, which was really cool. You couldn't do in GTA 3. If you're on a bike, you could shoot in front of you. So again, stuff like that, mechanics changed, the weapons, like Wayne was saying. I think in every department, arguably not graphically, but again, that might be just me, my opinion, but in every department, I think it was not just a little improvement and a sort of an expansion of the first one, but just a whole shift. There was a real evolution, I thought.
One big change. Sorry.
Oh no, sorry. I was going to say one thing that I did really appreciate, a big change they made. I remember playing GTA 3, and I specifically remember it was one of the Tony missions on Portland, and I remember getting chased by the triads, and they were beating me with baseball bats, and I turned around and fired, and the police were after me straight away. And you've just seen 18 people chasing me down the road, and you're coming for me. And Vice City, I think you got a good citizen bonus, didn't you? Where, firstly, if the police saw someone attacking you, they would go and try and nick them, which I really liked. Or you would see the police chasing a suspect, and you could come, as long as you just hit them. You didn't hit them with like a weapon or anything, but you could sort of just clothesline them.
As long as you didn't shoot them in front of the cop, they were cool with it. They're like, thanks for the help, bro. But if you hit them with a crowbar, they're like, oh, that's fine, yeah.
But it was nice that there was a bit of like, it was equalized a little bit more. Like, okay, now you're going to believe what you see, and I'm not always just going to be the suspect. I think that was a really good feature that they added.
That really was a neat element. And I don't think Rockstar was done with us yet at the time either, right? Because like you were saying with the bikes there, and they were about to introduce the bicycle mechanics into, where you could pop it up. You could do, bar flips, all kinds of things in the San Andreas version with the bicycles. That to me was mind blowing. But to think that just getting the bikes in the first place and the motorcycles was such a mind blowing thing at the time. And there were so many different varieties of it too, right? Where you had the sports bikes, you had the mopeds that would go like 20 miles an hour and you could deliver pizza on. You had the Harley Davidson looking bikes for, bikers and things like that. There was just so much variety for every single person in that game, and not just for the bikes, but the vehicles as well. You had sports cars, you had just normal daily beaters, you had station wagons, you had vans, you had SUVs. Everything was represented there in some way, shape, or form.
I think one of the other big improvements I personally thought was GTA had the silent protagonist. So you ran about as this dude that never spoke to anyone, never said anything, didn't even have a name.
Claude actually was his name. Claude.
Yeah, I think we found that out in San Andreas.
Yep.
I think they then name dropped him. But until then, we didn't even know who the dude was. And then when Vice City came out, we've got this cool Tommy Vercetti character that we get to play as, and whenever he's coming up with all these characters that we meet, he's giving grief and he's slobbering back, and I love that. I thought it was way more immersive to play as this established character that we get to learn about and get to know about. Did Tommy Vercetti show up in later GTA games? I don't remember.
I know in San Andreas you would fly back to Liberty City, I believe, but not Vice City itself. So I'm not sure Tommy Vercetti was ever making another appearance.
That was a rumor. I remember hearing that in school. I think that was a rumor that when San Andreas was coming out, which again was, really anticipated and a lot of fanfare, there were people saying, I don't know how they would find out. It must have been an online rumor. This is early days of the internet rumor mill. So this is before Reddit and Twitter and stuff like this.
This is the lunch table at school.
Exactly. Yeah. And someone's read some obscure blog post. But yeah, I think it was a rumor that you end up seeing Tommy Vercetti in one of the, I think it was San Andreas, yeah, but it never happened. And I actually think I read some, I don't know how reliable the source was, that the reason why they didn't introduce him is because Ray Liotta, who voiced Tommy Vercetti, didn't want to do it again. I think it wasn't the easiest time recording voicing with Ray Liotta. I think it was scheduling, and I think that from what I understand, there was a lot of complications with recording the dialogue with him for various reasons. And so I think it was just the difficulty in getting Ray Liotta back. And anyone who's played Vice City knows that you can't have Tommy Vercetti voiced by anyone else. It would be heresy at this point. He's so established as Ray Liotta now as the character that you couldn't have him back. So I think that's the only reason why they didn't. He's such a popular protagonist as well, that there's every reason to bring him back. If he was introduced in, say, the new GTA 6, that might not ever come out at this point, but if he's reintroduced, I think that would really be a selling point for anyone who's played the previous titles.
There was a sort of sequel to Vice City. There was Vice City Stories, which
Vice City
launched on
Stories,
the
yeah.
the PSP. I think that had a different protagonist. I never played that.
It was Lance's brother you played as.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
Yeah, that got released on PlayStation 2 as well eventually with Liberty City Stories. So yeah, you play as Lance's brother, I believe. And Vice City Stories is also great. You're still in Vice City and it has new soundtrack, but it's like an expansion pack more than it is an entirely new game. But yeah, Tommy Vercetti isn't in that either. So it's a real shame actually, because he's such a cool character.
Before we go on to talk about gameplay mechanics and all the other great elements of this game, including the soundtrack and everything else that's in there, were there any standout missions for you guys in the story that you can still remember to this day as either being really good or really bad?
There was a mission. There was a mission that this really stood out to me. It wasn't even playing the mission; it was talking about it afterwards, and I'll explain what I mean. There was a mission where someone's coming out of a club, and you've got to take them out. But I think there's a certain amount of timing in it that you've got to take them out at a certain time. If you shoot them too soon, then the mission's failed. I can't remember exactly what that is, but I played the mission and I was up on a roof on the opposite side of the street. And I don't know, whatever way I played it, I just assumed that's the only way you could do that mission. And then I got chatting to a friend the next day who had done the same mission. And he was saying, no. I stood down at the opposite of the end of the street on the corner and waited for the car to come round and then shot him. Or they might have used a grenade or something. And to me, up until then, whenever I'd played a game, if I'd played a game and a friend had played a game, we've both done the same thing. And it felt like the first time to me where it was a game where it was letting you play whatever way you wanted to play. You could have so many different tactics and so many different ways for these missions to be executed, or your target to be executed. And that's a big memory for me of Vice City. It's just having that conversation about how did you do it, and people saying that they carried out that mission in a completely different way. I love that. I really love that about the game.
I think one of the there's a few standout ones. One that really wasn't even that big a mission probably, but it was the most probably empathetic mission that I ever had with a character. And it was where all of your businesses that you've acquired at this time are getting taxed and the money's going down in all of them. So you've got, I think, like only a few minutes to go around to every single business you've got to get all the money before it all depletes. And that's one of the only missions that I've played in the GTA franchise where I was really invested in that mission, because I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be bankrupt for real life. I lose this. That was one of the biggest ones for me. Aaron, I'm pretty sure I know which one you're going to say. So
I think and I was going to say that, but I remembered another one. I think Liam's going to say there's a mission called The Driver.
Oh,
and
yes, indeed.
It's where you have to race the getaway driver. I forget his name, but you start outside the Malibu Club, and it took me so long to complete that race. It was so annoying. It took me probably about 15 tries in one day, and I gave up. I think because I had a day of school, and we brought the PlayStation 2 to my nan's house because she was looking after me and Liam at the time. I think we had a day of school. I don't know what was going on, but either way, I remember playing around her house. God knows what she thought. But I was playing this mission for ages, and it never got to the point where I suffer from this now, gamer rage, where I just want to throw the control at the TV. But I never had that. It still made it. it made it frustrating enough that you wanted to complete it, but not too frustrating that you end up wanting to put your fist through the TV. And I think that is a beauty of the game, that it was challenging enough that you knew you could do it with perseverance, but you wanted to do it. And I think that was a memorable mission for me, just because it ruined my life for a few days. But also, I think a mission that really stands out to me, because I thought, I've never seen this in a game before. This was really, really something that I was impressed with. Even at the time, I thought, what are they doing here? It's the mission called The Heist, where you have to rob the bank.
Yep.
And you're wearing the jumpsuits and the hockey masks, and you're with the getaway driver who you end up recruiting when you beat him in the race. And yeah, you're robbing a bank, and you have your role, which is to hold up everyone and rob them. I think there's a getaway driver waiting outside, and as soon as you start robbing a bank, you get, I think, 4 stars at least. And you're inside the bank.
At that point.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't know what's going to happen. And so you think, okay, I'm inside a bank, I'm robbing a bank, I'm taking people's money, I'm in a disguise, I've got a getaway driver, I have to do it in a certain time, and police will be chasing me after this. And I thought, this is like a film. There's again, people might not understand, only retrospectively can you really appreciate how groundbreaking that was. But there are so many games now that use that mold of a heist, a bank job, like Kane and Lynch. There's loads of missions. I don't know if anyone played Kane and Lynch. The amount of bank jobs you have to do in that mission, and even other GTA games. But that was the first time I saw something like that, and I thought, wow, this is like a film now. We're robbing a bank. This is so cool. Again, that took me about 11 goes. So yeah, again, it was a frustrating one as well.
I think for me, some of the missions, gosh, and especially taking the time to go back and play it through this past week or two, I dearly remember as a child growing up and playing. It's somewhere near the beginning of the game, but you basically have a mission to do for Avery Carrington, that cowboy. You're in the limo and he says, hey, I got to get these construction guys out of here, or something to that effect. And your job is to basically blow up the construction site, long story short. And you get in the limo, he gives you the job, you run over and get in this little van, and your job is to pilot these little RC helicopters with bombs attached to them. And you're supposed to pick up these bombs, go drop them off in different locations on the construction site while you've got guys shooting at you, while you've got guys hitting this little RC helicopter. And that thing must have, there's a timer on it too. I think it's around 5 or 6 minutes. And I must have failed this as a kid like 500 times at least. I mean, it was like the most stress-inducing thing on the entire planet at the time, because, you're not paying taxes or anything at that age. What else can you be mad at, right? Besides GTA. But that was a frustrating mission. And I was going back through and playing that this week. It took me one try and I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my gosh, like, why was I not this good of a player back then? But my bubble was about to be burst, because there was a couple missions later where you're doing other things, like you're supposed to go hijack a tank, the Rhino, and steal that from the military convoy that's going through town. And I must have done this like 50 times this week. And I spent probably 2 or 3 hours just on this one mission. Like, I have got, for the sake of this podcast, I have got to beat this mission. And I just couldn't do it. Like, I dusted the guy on top of the tank and I'd try to run up to it, and I'd get just immediately shot by like 50 police, 50 military guys. And you know how you see those trails of white smoke after every bullet, basically? You would see like 1 million of those coming at you and you were dead in a heartbeat. And I could never figure out how to do it. So I finally resorted to using cheat codes as an adult to beat this game, which we'll get into later, all the different cheat codes that were available for this game. But I just couldn't believe, like, here it is 20 years later and I still suck at this game. And
correct me if I'm wrong, but in those games, GTA 3, Vice City, San Andreas, we didn't have checkpoints the way we do in missions now. So if you failed a mission 95% into it, it's right back to the start. You got to do that all over again. Yeah. Whereas now I think games kind of pander to us to a degree. If there's a mission in GTA 5 and it's 8 sequences long, and you get to sequence 7, it probably only kicks you back that little bit and you can continue off from where you screwed up. Vice City was brutal when it came to some missions, As you say, the one with the RC helicopter, and you're 5.5 minutes into a 6-minute mission, and then you screw up. No, back to the start. Do it all over again.
Problem was, as well, if you'd get halfway through a mission and then fail it, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you had maybe 3 or 4 wanted stars, and you failed the mission, those wanted stars would stay with you.
Yeah,
so you had a choice. You either fail it, load, and then have to go all the way back to the hideout again, wherever that might be, or you'd fail it, have to lose those 3 or 4 stars, then go back and do it again.
Yeah,
And
I
mission
think
attempt.
it might have been. It might have been different in console, but I'm pretty sure on PC as well, you could complete a mission, right? And then if you were driving home to your save point, essentially, and for whatever reason you didn't get there, again, that's the mission lost, you know? The next time
Yeah.
you put it up.
God forbid you like,
didn't-
tried to
you
transport a
didn't save
vehicle and
after
you
the mission,
drowned.
you know?
There's PlayStation 2, no
So-
autosave.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah, if you didn't save, that's it.
we didn't complain about it back then. It wasn't a thing, you know. If a game was tough, a game was tough. You weren't on Twitter to Rockstar going, why isn't there checkpoints in this mission? You know, you just get on with it and you play that mission 20, 30, 40 times until you beat it.
That, or I'd rip out the old Game Shark or Prima Strategy Guide and be like, all right, I got something for you, sucker.
Yeah.
And this is all on the assumption that your memory card's got enough save slots on it.
That's right. Yeah, those were
Yeah.
super limited. Yeah, I was so when I was playing that this week, I noticed there were only like 4 or 5 save slots on there or something like that. Which, I mean, it's not like I was going to use all of them anyway. But I think back then there was a lot less, if I can recall properly. That you didn't have like 5 or 6 auto save slots, which they still even in the HD version that's out right now, that doesn't exist. There's still no auto save features in that game, so they kept
No.
it clean.
I don't know. There's a beauty of making a game difficult and challenging because the onus is then on the developer to make it encourage you to carry on playing it.
Mhm.
Because they like I was saying before, the difficulty, it has to be such that it's a challenge and it's not too easy, but it's not too frustrating and too impossible where you just think, forget this. This is not worth it. This is impossible. And so there was, I think, the other mission, as you were saying, Andy, the one where you have to steal the tank. Is that for Mitch Baker, the biker?
I think it's prior to that. I think you were doing this for a Colonel Diaz.
Okay, because
And
there's
I
another
can't-
mission for Mitch Baker, which sounds similar. And for Mitch Baker, is you have to get 6 stars. You have to cause as much destruction as possible. And you have a gauge. And it has, so you have to make this gauge, this bar go all the way to the top. So headshots, killing people, blowing things up. You have to fill this gauge up for Mitch Baker to earn your stripes, I suppose, so that you can work for him.
And who was Mitch Baker? He was like the crazy
Biker guy.
biker Vietnam
Yeah, exactly.
guy. Yep.
Yeah, and so that mission was another mission. And again, we're talking about difficulty. It was impossible. It took me ages to do. You have to get the chaos bar all the way to the top by killing people, blowing up cars, whatever. But obviously, as you're doing this, your stars are growing and growing and growing. And so I ended up getting to 6 stars, barely any health left. Complete the mission. As soon as the mission finalizes and you complete it, it says mission complete. Okay, done. I got my reward. But as what happened usually in the Vice City games, GTA games, is that when you complete a mission, your stars would go. So if you acquired 3 stars by doing a certain mission, once the mission was complete, your stars would go. As I suppose as a bonus, as a reward, because it wouldn't be fair otherwise. But this mission, the stars didn't go. So you've completed the mission, you still have 6 stars. So you still have the army and the FBI cars coming after you, even though you complete the mission. So now you have to go to your nearest hideout to save your game before you die. Otherwise, you're gonna have to do this mission again. And I think that I forgot about that is my worst mission for that game. And the reason why I'm saying this is because, again, the difficulty. The whole, oh my God, now I have to save. That alone is a mission, unofficially, because I was driving with ball tires. I had 4 pop tires, driving on sparks. My car was about to blow up, creaking along to get to my nearest safe house, hoping that when I get out of the car, I don't die, because otherwise I'm gonna have to do this impossible mission all over again. And
You've
so
got
that
like
in
the
itself-
whiter black smoke pouring out of the hood
Yeah,
as well,
exactly. The
indicating
black
that you
smoke's
might be on
coming.
fire in a second.
Exactly. And I thought, okay, this is now a mission in itself. That is not even a thing. I had to do this for myself, otherwise I'm going to start again. And like Wayne was saying, saving without any checkpoints is something I don't even think is a thing in games anymore. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
not
I'm
really.
wrong.
I mean, outside of like, the Dark Souls games and, Soul style games like that or Sekiro, where you've got, really infrequent save points and you've got to perfect your playthrough. You're absolutely right. I can't even imagine if a game came out today on a Rockstar level, where it's a huge, nice open world game and then, hey, save game manual everywhere, only
Yeah.
by location. So I guess we could talk about the gameplay mechanics of this, because these were pretty revolutionary at the time. I remember in Grand Theft Auto 3, the only time you could really shoot is if you were standing still, especially with, ARs and things like that. And I can't recall if you could shoot and move at the same time with a pistol or something like that. But for the most part, you had to stand still if you were shooting. And with Grand Theft Auto Vice City, you could really run around with like an Uzi. You could do almost anything and still be on the move with that. It was just the mechanics of this game to me were just mind blowing. The way vehicles handled everything.
Yeah, there was.
I actually.
Oh, sorry, mate. Go on after you.
Go. I actually played it kind of in a slightly unorthodox way. You guys probably played it on PlayStation. I was playing it on PC at the time. I used to sit with a game controller plugged in, and the game controller would sit on my lap, and then I would have the keyboard and mouse in front of me. So when I'm on foot, I was controlling the keyboard and mouse because you know the better aims and stuff like that. As soon as I jumped in a car, I would then lift up the controller and use the controller for driving. And it's the only game. Well, GTA 3 and Vice City are the only games I've ever played with that sort of keyboard controller combo. And it actually worked brilliantly. It was so good. The controller I used, I don't know if you remember Sidewinders. That was Microsoft's
Oh my gosh.
controllers. Yeah, it was a little boomerang shaped thing. But just remembering that, I would love to play a game like that again, And it was actually a little broken on PC in that it was very, very easy to shoot people that were very far away if you had the keyboard and mouse. I know the PlayStation had like a lock-on feature. So once you got close enough to someone and you aimed, you could lock on and just start firing. Whereas on the PC, you could be so far away as long as they're on screen. You pull out your Uzi and you start shooting, they're dead. I think it actually made it a lot easier on PC, less of a challenge. Which isn't always a good thing, but in terms of game mechanics, that's sort of like the standout memory I have is having that sort of dual control sort of thing.
What a horrible memory.
I remember at the time I wasn't playing, Aaron. I think you were playing, and in retrospect now, and having played it the HD collection on the PS4, how impressive that was at the time. I remember there was a mission and it really just pushed the mechanics to the limit. I can't remember who the mission was for, but it was where you're driving and you're intoxicated as well. And the whole screen is sort of bending and sort of swaying like that.
It's all boozy, yeah.
Yeah, and the mechanics there, I mean, I haven't seen it in a game since then. And I remember... I mean, imagine this. I remember walking into the room and Aaron, you were playing, and I was like, "What the hell is going on with this game?" Imagine a little 11-year-old just walking in, just seeing all that on the TV, and I haven't seen that replicated since, and it was incredible. And playing it again, like I said, on the HD collection, you think, "Wow, this was so ahead of its time to be doing things like that." And that sort of, even though it's third person, to be viewing it almost as a first person, it was incredible, man.
That was an Auntie Poulet mission. She gives you a drink and it makes you stoned and you have to get to a certain place. And like Lee was saying, the mechanics responded with the visuals. So you were driving drunk. So you would steer to the car and in reality, it would overcompensate your steer, and you were driving drunk. And the mechanics reflected that. And it's an obvious thing to incorporate in a game where you're stoned, or drunk, whatever it is, that your mechanics would reflect that. But it sounds obvious to do, but I think to do it in the first place, that I forgot about that. That's a really interesting thing. The mechanics were really responsive to the gameplay that's happening in front of you. The difference, because there's so many new weapons, the difference in gameplay and mechanics, depending on what you were using at the time as well. So when you had the chainsaw, you couldn't run very fast, and you were sort of like sluggishly moving around. Subtle, nuanced mechanics like that. Just added to the realism. And I think GTA is maybe infamous for mixing realism or hyper-realism with complete fantasy and ridiculousness in video games. But the mechanics that I thought were really good were the improvement to driving. The cars were more responsive, but still arcadey enough that it didn't feel too realistic again. So it managed to make them realistic enough where you could enjoy it more, and they were responsive, but without having I think GTA 4 started the trend of making the mechanics for driving especially very realistic.
That's funny you say driving, because that always stood out to me as such a wonderful thing. I think back to like the first time you flew down the Miami Strip area, you know, on like the bottom right side of the map where everything's all neoned out and you got the beach on the other side, and flying down that street. And if you were in a Banshee or Comet or a Cheetah, one of those sports cars, and you tried to hit the brakes, that thing was going to slide out from under you, and you were going to hit, hopefully not a police car or a pedestrian or something. But that was always a challenge in itself. And I remember it too for the mechanics. If it rained in that game and you were driving a car, especially a motorcycle, it was hard to stop that thing if you were leaning in at full speed. And I was doing that even this week. You would think after like 20, 30 years of playing video games, I'd be able to handle a vehicle pretty well no matter what. No, I was still crashing this thing left and right, just on the way to do a mission or whatever.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those things, a lot of those little things, because they were new at the time, despite the fact that it was only something small, it was enough to distract you from the game. Like I remember trying to do wheelies up and down. Aaron talked about the bit with the beach and the main road there. I think that reflects like Miami Beach. Just trying to do wheelies for the entire length of that, back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. And it's like, come on, Wayne, there's a game to get on with here. You know, there's cocaine to be sold. Stop doing wheelies up and down the street.
What did you guys think about the combat in that game? I know that there were some differences there between that and Grand Theft Auto 3, but at the time, again, I felt like it was incredible to have the lock-on system and all kinds of different elements in that game.
Yeah, for hand-to-hand combat, the lock-on system I think was introduced in that game, which wasn't in GTA 3. I remember GTA 3, the amount of times I died because I lost a fist fight. You know, there was sometimes it'd be difficult to maneuver yourself to hit the person you're hitting. I might be wrong, I can't remember exactly, but I don't think there was a lock-on for the hand-to-hand combat in GTA 3. and Vice City, there definitely was. And so, yeah, it's rudimentary. It's circle. And for PlayStation gamers anyway, it was a circle button, and then you just punch or kick however many times you wanted to. But the combat system, if we're talking about also with guns and whatever weapon you had, was, I think, improved because the lock-on system was improved. There were different targeted... there were different aim mechanics depending on the game, the gun or weapon that you used as well. Obviously, GTA isn't famous for its hand-to-hand combat or combat, generally speaking. It's more a shoot 'em up sort of thing, if you're going to talk about that. But I think it definitely improved on the GTA 3 franchise. And I think the Vice City standard actually stuck into San Andreas, at least from then on. I think it sort of set the benchmark for the rest of the GTA games at that point.
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, in GTA 3, I think with hand-to-hand combat, if you were running after someone, I think every time you press circle, you'd stop and then
Yeah, you
do
would.
like a little jab, and then you'd
Yep.
run again. Whereas in Vice City, you could, yeah, like I said earlier, clothesline them basically. And I think, yeah, I remember that's where they introduced the knuckle duster, the brass knuckles, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then as soon as you got that, then you couldn't take
Right.
it off. And if you get caught hitting someone with that, then again you're nicked, man. You're finished.
What about you, Wayne? What do you think about all these with the combat?
I've never liked hand-to-hand combat in GTA. You know, put a gun in my hand. Just give me a shotgun or an Uzi, or even better. I mean, I love being sneaky in GTA games. So
Really?
if a GTA game came out and it didn't have a sniper rifle in it, I would be a very sad little boy. You know, I used to love doing that. I used to love the idea of trying to finish a mission without getting any stars. To me, that was like an added challenge on top of what was already there. You know. So that, and again, this is what I was alluding to earlier. It was the fact that you could play these missions out in whatever style you wanted. You know, go charging in with a shotgun or an Uzi, or hold back and, you know, snipe off enemies and watch them run around like crazy because they don't know where the shot came from. Yeah, I love that. You know.
How about the power-ups and consumables in that game? Because there were a lot of different things that really stood out to me playing that back through this week that I'd kind of forgotten about. You know, having to go around and pick up health packs. And it had that weird, like, it was a heart shape with a pink aura around it. You know, everything in that game that fell down had an aura around it of some way, shape, or form, whether it was a weapon or money. But there was that for health. And if you needed armor, there was those big white circles with it was body armor or something like that in the middle of it. And you could pick that up as well. That to me was just mind blowing at the time. And I would seemingly try to hunt those down before every single mission, even if I had to go to the same place 20 times on a map. I would always do that before a mission, just so I'd have a better chance of survival and completing it.
Yeah, if I anticipated or if I knew a hard mission was coming up, what I did was there was the paramedic missions that you could do, and if you got to a certain level of that, then your health would go from 100 to 150. And I think it was the police missions, your arm would go from 100 to 150. So I remember by about probably 4 missions towards the end, I remember having to, it was either that or use cheats and, R2, R2, L1, L2 and all that
Yep.
a little quick thing of business. And I thought, right, okay, if I just bang out all the paramedic missions, all the police missions, all the fire missions, then I'll be fireproof. I'll have 150 armor, 150 health, then try and take me down. And they always did take me down, but it took them a little bit longer anyway.
There were so many different ones too, right? As far as side missions, I mean, you could do like firefighting with the hose and everything like that was a thing. What other ones were there? Gosh, Kaufman cabs, I know, was a big one.
The pizza delivery as well.
Yeah, you could fly around in that moped and sling those pizza boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that.
I think in terms of upgrades, what was really cool was what was changed from GTA 3 was that there were categorized weapons. So there were, I think in the weapon icon, there were different colored backgrounds depending on what category of weapons you were using. And so there were a variety of weapons for that specific category. So you could only carry one from that category at a time. So you could technically upgrade your arsenal depending on which guns you found at the time. And I thought that was really cool. So I think one was orange. I think that was for hand-to-hand combat. So you could have a knife with you, or you could have the knuckle dusters, or you could have something else. For purple, I think those were heavy range. So you could have, I don't know if it was an M4 or a shotgun. So there was an element of, I suppose, crude RPG style tactics there that you had to decide what one you wanted to keep for certain missions. Do I want to go in with a shotgun or an AK-47? Because I can't have both. And so there was an element of strategy that was introduced in that game where you could upgrade your arsenal, but at the risk of losing a weapon that you might have really loved at the time. And so I remember really agonizing over what to lose because I thought, am I ever going to find this again? Am I going to kill someone who happens to have the same gun again? That really caused me a lot of stress. I remember thinking, I really love the AK-47 and the Spaz shotgun. And I think I had to lose one of them for a certain mission. And I thought, oh man, I don't want to lose this. When am I going to get this gun back? And I was really bummed out by that.
There were a lot of other side missions as well, right? I mean, we had the paramedic, we had the shooting range, firefighting, like we'd said, heists, pizza boy. You could even go up and rob stores if you wanted to and just walk in there with the gun and say, I don't think you would say anything, but you would just look at them and say, give me the cash or something to that effect. And those little green bars would appear like right there on the counter to take. Taxi driving, vigilante. If you ever got in a police vehicle, you could click missions to hunt people down and do that as well.
There was also the not necessarily side missions, but the Sunshine Autos. When you got that, and there was down the ramp, there was the list of all the different cars and the categories. You had to collect all of them, and then you'd unlock a different car. I really enjoyed doing that because some of them, like some of the worst cars, you could get like a Manana or like a Blister. Them like really rubbish cars. It was so hard to find by the time you'd own Sunshine. Because when you own Sunshine Autos, that's when you see the Infernus, the Comet, the Banshee. That's when you see all those cars driving down. And then the original cars that were on Ocean Beach were so hard to find there. And I remember doing them, and they were really fun to do. That took a lot of time.
One of the things about the side missions in Vice City is that every single one of them was fun. There was none of them that felt like a grind or a bore, or you're sitting thinking, why did they put this in? Like with the more modern GTA games, there's certain things where whenever you're pushing for that 100% completion run, you're sitting there thinking, why am I playing tennis? If I wanted to play tennis, I would have bought a tennis game. Why am I doing yoga? They just kept it all fun in Vice City. And there was no filler. It was all killer. And I really wish Rockstar would go back and look at their old games and sort of say, hold on a minute, why was this in it? Why was this not in it? Because there was so much fun. I think GTA has lost an element of fun. I think it takes itself a little bit too seriously now these days. And all the stuff we're talking about is exactly why those games put a smile on your face.
Yeah, there was so much.
Sorry.
There was so much going on as well. I don't know if it was in Vice City. I'm sure it was. It was definitely in GTA 3 where you had the telephone missions. Was that in Vice City as well?
That was, yeah. You
Yeah.
could go around and assassinate people, basically.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you'd only find them by chance. They weren't on the map, if I remember. You just drive by and you'd hear, what was that phone? What was that? What was that? You'd run around and it'd be like it was like a storyline in and of itself that was completely independent of the main storyline. That was a really nice touch.
Sorry, Andy. I was
No,
just going to
go ahead.
say more to what Wayne was saying. I completely agree with you, Wayne, about Rockstar and the GTA games in general now taking themselves a little bit too seriously. I think, for me, the arcadiness of the GTA, the original GTA 3, Vice City, San Andreas, the fact that it felt like a video game and it wasn't trying to be too immersive at the expense of fun. Realism was a thing that they were going for. And I think there's a place for that. But in a game where you are in a sandbox world where you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, I think it defeats the point in maybe making it too realistic at the expense of having just a fun time. And so I think the reason why those original three have such an edge that the current generation of GTA games doesn't have is because it was self-aware. It wasn't trying to be more than it was. Yeah. It wasn't trying to be everything for everyone. So you couldn't go and do yoga, and you couldn't go and, you could have dates in GTA by San Andreas and stuff like that, which is really cool. So there was RPG elements in later games, but I think they were very aware of the fact that this was for people who wanted to play and have fun. And so, like you said, there was never a filler, a mission where you thought, this is stupid. Even the mundane missions where you might just pick someone up and drop them off to another location, it would always be complicated. There would always be something there that would make it challenging enough. And so it was never a chore to play that game, no matter what you were doing. And even when you complete every mission, there was always something that you would want to do there to do. And so the fun lay outside of the missions or storyline as well.
There was something Tony touched on about, like, whenever you were going down the streets and you would see those little icons spinning in the street, or when someone got killed and money fell out, like the money was a little pile of cash that spun in a circle on the ground. And to me, that was another way of them almost saying, we're not afraid of this being a video game. We're accepting that money and guns sitting on the ground are little spinning icons because it is a video game, and they weren't striving for that realism. You would never see that in a modern GTA game,
Because if they were doing that, right, I mean, as far as the realism factor in Vice City, I guess they could have just gotten rid of those little pink or, orange or green auras that were around weapons. I thought it was cool too with those auras, speaking of them, when, like, let's say you ran over a drug dealer or something in the game, like there'd be like 50 little piles of cash that showed up around his body. Like, you're just like, whoa, what is this? As opposed to killing some homeless dude on the sidewalk where, nothing would come out. And I just thought so many little factors like that they added in this game was absolutely mind-blowing. So before we dive into the rest of the content here, where we're going to talk about some of the details as far as, the challenges that were in this game, the different factions, the gangs, the map, the inventory, the weapons, and everything else, vehicles, let's talk a little bit about my favorite thing about this game, which was the soundtrack and the music behind it. There was so much going on with this at the time, and even just being a kid and not being able to appreciate half of these bands or what they are today, there was so many good ones. Looking back at this, there was Flash FM, K-Chat, like we were talking about earlier with Laszlo, Fever 105, V-Rock, VCPR, which was like basically the chat show, where you'd hear all kinds of insane commentary. The Latin American channel for Espantoso, if I'm saying that right, Emotion 98.3 and Wave 103. There's a couple other ones out there, but those were some of the highlights that I'm sure a lot of people remember. And there were some good tracks out there, were there not?
I mean, there was something on there for absolutely everyone. I would usually flick between Wave, Flash, where every night's a dance party. V-Rock. And the thing is, even if you didn't like music, like you said, you just go to VCPR and you'd hear, like, Avery Carrington talking. I remember there was one like interview that they were doing on VCPR where someone started shooting everyone on the radio, and it's like, there's something here for everyone. If you don't even like music, just listen to that. But there was some complete bangers on there, man. And what I really liked as well was it was really nuanced how, depending on what car you got into, there would be the relative station playing. So if you got into, for example, the Cuban car, it would have Espantoso playing. If you got on a motorbike, it would have V-Rock playing. And I thought that was so incredible to have something like that in there. But yeah, they had some real bangers, man.
I think for me, the reason why the soundtrack in Vice City is so important is because, one, it introduced at least my generation, which just missed out on the 80s. So at least for me, Liam, and you, Andy, we missed out on the 80s. We had no recollection of it. So it introduced us to a whole new era of music that we might not have otherwise heard, except for if your parents were into it. So for me and Liam, my mum especially, she was into that stuff. She was an 80s girl. She was a soul girl. So we heard a lot of this stuff. But the stuff you hear on, let's say, Emotion, for example, I have the Vice City soundtrack on my iTunes. I have that as a complete playlist, even to this day, because it's so, it's synonymous now with a point in my life where I was just so content and so at peace and so happy playing that game. And you can't take away the relationship between your memories and the music. It's sort of what crystallizes those for you at that point in time. And Alim was saying there was something for everyone there, and everything was there was such attention to detail paid by Rockstar, so that even the bits in between the songs where the DJ would be playing, there would be, I think on V-Rock, there's a point where Laszlo, the DJ of V-Rock, he interviews Love Fist. And so there's just an interview of them. And so I would sometimes pull over so I didn't have the engine sound, so I could finish hearing what the interview was or what was being said on the radio. And it was just so good. And also I think I really attribute GTA and Tony Hawk's for using music in a way no other video game series maybe did before or maybe has ever done. Except for the Nintendo series, like the Zelda music and the Mario music, which is their own original soundtracks, which is something else to talk about. But the way those two franchises used popular music to give such a dynamic to the gameplay and amalgamate the different mediums, the different sort of the way you can enjoy the game for a point in time. So, I remember listening to that song when I did that mission. And again, like Tony Hawk's, obviously we've had a remaster now, and everyone was thinking, are you going to get the original soundtrack? Because if you don't, it's not a new Tony Hawk's game, in my opinion. And that was a really big deal. So I think kudos to Rockstar for getting the licensing. I mean, they got everyone. They got Michael Jackson and Luther Vandross. I don't know how they managed to do that, but it was so... And the first thing you hear when you play the game is Billie Jean or Michael Jackson, by Michael Jackson. I think it was programmed so that no matter what you did, that was the first thing you hear, no matter when you got into a car. Because I remember everyone saying in school, the Monday after it came out and everyone started playing it, yeah, that was the first thing we heard. And I just thought, man, you know where you are when you hear Billie Jean kick in and you just start by C. It's just so awesome.
One of the things that blew my mind about the radio stations is sometimes after you finished a mission, the next car that you get into, it would kick off with a radio station and the news would be on, and the news would be telling you about, if the mission was shooting a guy outside a club, then they'd be like, club owner such and such got shot outside on the way out, and you're going, I done that. That was me.
That was me.
They're talking about me. And I know it's such a simple thing. It's just, triggering a little sound file after, a mission's been complete, but it felt like so much more at the time, it just, again, immersion. It just dropped you and made you feel like you were interacting with that world, and the things that you were doing and the crimes that you were committing were having an impact on not just your story, but the world as a whole. You can almost imagine other characters getting into their car and also hearing that thing, and you're driving down the street and people are going, that's the guy that killed the club owner last night, I thought that had such an impact on the game, such an impact.
Same. I mean, gosh, I cannot talk about this game without talking about the soundtrack, just because of how much it's had an impact on me in my life. I guess, looking at V-Rock here, some of the artists that are featured just on that station alone, and, there's a lot of other stations out there. I think Emotion and Wave both have some really killer 80s artists on there. But V-Rock had Twisted Sister, Motley Crue, Quiet Riot, The Cult, Ozzy Osbourne, can't forget Love Fist, obviously, right? They're in-game artists. There was Iron Maiden, Tesla, Megadeth, Anthrax, Slayer, Judas Priest, David Lee Roth. What the heck is going on here? Like, I don't think I've ever seen a radio station or soundtrack just within that radio station that good in a game since. And I'll say, like, since that, I mean, Wayne, you and I met years ago in England at an Iron Maiden concert, right? And this
Yeah,
game
we
was
did,
like
indeed, yeah.
really, we did. And this game was kind of my introduction with 2 Minutes to Midnight by Iron Maiden, hearing that. And then who would think, like, 20 years later, we'd be going on and that song and that band would just have just such a huge influence that it would carry me overseas, meet you, and then we'd be here on this podcast, like all that kind of came around Vice City, right?
Amazing. So it was Vice City was the sort of the root cause of what you're sitting watching right now.
Right. It's insane, yeah.
And even
I think one of the other things.
Sorry, mate, go on.
Cool. Like the budget for that soundtrack, the budget for the soundtrack must have been on par with the budget for other video games at the time. Forget about writing a single line of code, forget about your market and whatever. They must have spent a fortune getting those songs licensed for that game. There's just so much in there. As you say, what's it cost to license a Michael Jackson song before you even think about the rest of it? Must have been a serious amount of money.
I shudder to think.
Yeah.
But still, it was money well spent. I'm yet to hear, even in real life, I'm yet to hear a radio station that sounds as good as Wave 103.
I was going to say that as well. What does that say about either Our World Now or Vice City? That a fictional radio station is better than any radio station I can think off the top of my head.
So Wave 103, some of those feature artists on that channel, I guess this would be huge for you guys over there in the UK. Gary Newman, The Human League, Blondie, Nina with 99 Left Balloons. Who can forget that? Tears for Fears, Corey Hart, A Flock of Seagulls, and Emotion. I mean, there's like Spandau Ballet. There's so many others on there just on that channel. That's just insane.
Yeah, and even like the advertisement for the radio station, like Emotion would be like, Emotion. They just got it. They've nailed everything about it. They got it.
Emotion, that had Foreigner, that had Squeeze, REO Speedwagon, Toto, Africa. Who can forget that song? Oh my gosh.
That's amazing.
I think Roxy Music was on Emotion. I think I love Roxy Music, and I remember actually asking Liam to stop. You might remember this, Liam. You were playing the game Vice City, and More Than This by Roxy Music was on Emotion. You were driving, and you weren't paying attention. You were too busy doing the mission. I'm like, can you just pause it and let the radio station play? Just because I love this song so much. And you just
can you pull over, please?
Yeah, can you just pull over and just listen to this before you continue? Because I know you're going to get out of the car and start killing people, and I want to hear the song finish first. You didn't listen to me, but that's the thing. The option. I don't know if anyone knew this at the time. I know I did, that you could pause and listen to the radio stations just by themselves. So there was an option to just flick through the radio stations on the pause menu, and just listen to them and let them play. And again, it was that attention to detail. You could just listen to the radio while you're doing anything else in your room at the time. The game's on pause, and you could just let Flash FM play while you're doing your homework or something. At least for me in school, it's so awesome that to have the forethought of doing that, because they knew what they were onto. These radio stations, so much care and attention to what they were putting on, and the voice acting on the different stations, so the DJs or the guests on VCPR. So much script and thought and just acting ability went into all of those things that it would be a sin not to at least pay them some attention anyway. So I remember doing that a few times, just pausing it and playing, I don't know, V-Rock, seeing what was coming on. This is our advent into rock music for me and Liam. So this is when we get into this. I was like, who is this Iron Maiden? And then you hear that,
Some of the other noteworthy ones in here too, I guess we should mention too. Grandmaster Funk, there's Houdini, there's obviously Michael Jackson, there's Hall & Oates, Wang Chung. I've never known how to pronounce this, even in my adult life. INXS, Inxis, is that how it's pronounced?
INXS.
Is that, jeez, yeah. Well, here I am. Like, that's something new for me every day. Electric Light Orchestra, ELO, Bryan Adams, The Buggles, Joe Jackson.
Tune.
What?
Run to You, the Bryan Adams one.
Oh yeah, that was a great song, man.
I'm gonna run to you. Cool in the Gang. There's so many on here. It's just absolutely mind-blowing to think all those are in one soundtrack, let alone a video game for that matter, right?
It's crazy. I remember, I think they sold it really, really briefly on physical disc. There's a store in UK, HMV. Well, doesn't exist anymore. But I think I remember seeing that in the CD section, the compilation CD, and it was by C. And the artwork was so cool. It was in keeping with the box art of the actual game itself. So I was really contemplating buying it, and then I saw it was like £30 or something, and I'm 12. What do I have? And so I just thought, my mum was like, we have them on LP anyway. You know how my mum is. So we didn't get it. But now I have it on my phone. And sometimes I'm in the certain mood in the gym, I'll put on Vice City soundtrack. You know, it's just, it to this day, it's timeless, because you can't, like I was saying, you can't separate it between your time playing the game. And it informs your memories so much.
It's a beautiful thing. And there's so many other elements too, as far as content for this game. Let's talk about the factions a little bit. You had, you know, the Carlos Diaz gang, the guys in the Hawaiian looking t-shirts. You had the Cubans, which had, you know, the white pants and the blue shirts often. Gosh, so many others I'm missing here. The biker gangs. I don't know if you can count the police as a faction or a gang in here, because they were always on your case and you were a criminal anyway. So, you know, it almost felt like you were at a gang war with them. But anyway, just a ton of factions in this game.
One of the, the faction that stood out to me the most, and it has to be obvious, would be your own faction, because GTA 3 didn't have that. And, you know, when you get to a certain point in the game, you're at Diaz's former mansion, now yours, and your own crew are outside, all wearing the matching Hawaiian shirts that you had at the beginning, just a little bit darker. And, you know, just to have that, to know that you had your own little gang outside your mansion, just to show how far you were going in the game. That was a great little touch as well, to have that. And it made you more of, in GTA 3, I know you were a single character and you were taking on, you know, Yakuza, the Mafia, the Triads, you know, you were taking on everyone as a solo guy. And here it was like, no, now you're a kingpin, man. You're an actual leader here, and you've got your own little crew. I thought that was a great little addition.
And they had your back. If someone tried to attack you,
yeah,
then your gang would take care of them in no time.
It wasn't uncommon either to be, you know, driving or walking down the street and see two gangs like fighting each other, especially on the west side of the map, where you know, if like a Haitian or a Cuban crossover happened on the sidewalk, they would just start shooting out of nowhere, and you're like, what is going on? And that was totally a thing then.
I didn't like seeing that, so I just ran them all over, because I stopped fighting.
You can always take their weapons too, right? I mean, you didn't have to like go to the gun store and buy it at ammunition
This is the
at the time.
Who was buying weapons in GTA Vice City? You just end up stealing everyone's gun. I thought I treated money in that game as my own money, and I guess I'm tight. I guess I'm a frugal guy. I never spent any money on weapons. I thought I could kill a Haitian or a Cuban, or I could buy it. There was no option. Like, where's the biggest car?
Ammunition was expensive as well. Ammunition was like a few grand for a 9mm.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
Like, no way I could get that literally in that back alley there. It's just circling.
It was like $100 for a baseball bat or something too. Like what? Like
yeah,
I'm just gonna go kill somebody and steal this. Yeah,
this is the 80s as well. You got to consider inflation. $100 in the 80s. God knows what that would have been.
That's hilarious. Let's talk about the weapons a little bit. There was a ton going on there. I mean, it's almost synonymous with cheat codes at this point, because you had like 3 tiers of weapons, it seemed like, at least with the cheats. And I mean, I guess the melee weapons, you had, like you mentioned earlier, the brass knucks, you had the katana, the chainsaw, just so many elements in that game that we had never seen in a GTA, or really a lot of games at that point in time, right?
Yeah, how they incorporated the weapon with the actual damage that it would do. And so, say for example, with the katana, it wouldn't work the same as any other weapon. It wouldn't just be like an up and down motion. It would be, sometimes it would be random almost. Sometimes you'd go straight through someone. Sometimes you'd go and chop their head off. And it was almost so random how that would happen.
I think the reason why there was such an improvement on the weapons, and again, like I was saying before, it set a benchmark for the rest of the GTAs, is that the response to weapons, like Liam was saying, they felt a lot more unique to the specific weapon compared to GTA 3. Again, it's so hard for anyone listening. It is really hard to not compare the two, because they came out quite close together, and there was still such a fresh thing. So it's natural to compare the two. But you had, I think we were saying earlier, you had like 8, I think, was it 8 weapons, Wayne, or 9 weapons in the whole GTA 3? 11,
it was 11 in total.
And They were awesome. I love the GTA 3 weapons. They sounded really cool, and they served the function. They were more powerful than others, but ultimately there wasn't as much of a unique feel to using them. So the shotgun was, pretty standard. And then I remember having the Spaz shotgun. Again, it was my favorite weapon in GTA Vice City, which would be way faster than the pump action shotgun. And it was just like, oh man, they've really given thought into how each of these weapons are going to work. It seemed like they put a lot of detail into thinking, again, an element of RPG. What am I going to use? Because if I need to take off, 4 gang members at one time, I'm not going to want something that's quite slow. I want something that would be easy to aim, one shot and you're dead. Okay, I'm going to use the Colt 45 for this mission. No, you need a spray and pray. Let's get an Uzi. So it had the uniqueness of how those weapons would react for the gameplay in Vice City, I think was something that was really, really cool for me, at least.
One thing that kind of got to me about the variety of weapons, this would be the only criticism that I would have, was that, especially with something like the Colt, that was my favorite handgun. That was my go-to. And so much so that I had the maximum amount of bullets. I think it was like 999.99 or something like that. But when you'd start a certain mission, there was, I can't remember what mission it was, but there's some missions where you would be given automatically a certain weapon, and it would replace one that you'd had. And that sort of got to me a little bit, because it's like, I've got infinite ammo on this pretty much, and I had to go through hell to get it in the first place. And they just substituted it with this spud gun, pretty much.
Yeah.
These suckers aren't cheap at ammunition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the one sort of downfall that I found with, not necessarily with the variety of weapons, but maybe how they would incorporate the variety of weapons in the storyline and the missions. Like, I would have preferred a bit of free reign with that, I think.
I loved the tiered weapons. I mean, the game wasn't necessarily, chopping it off or, what we would call paywalling it these days or anything else, or, staggering them out. But there were times where, let's say in the beginning of the game, you got this weapon. And for example, I don't know, you'd be using your fist to beat someone up. Late game, you'd have the brass knucks, the chainsaw, something like that. But that applied to guns and, throwables too, right? Because you'd get a grenade in the beginning, but later on you'd get Molotovs, you'd get tear gas was a thing as well, I recall. Remote controlled grenades, that was the thing too, where you could set it off with a detonator in your hand, that little remote with a giant antenna on it. Yeah. There was so many other ones, gosh, like a Tech 9 or an Uzi, you'd call it. And then there was an MP5 as well, 2 different submachine guns for that slot. There was the flamethrower, the minigun, the Gatling gun, whatever you want to call it. Those are all just absolutely insane to use for anything, whether it was a rampage or during a mission.
I can't believe we have talked for GTA for this long and no one's mentioned a rocket launcher.
That's true.
To me, that was what. Whenever you want to get silly, whenever you do drift away from, I'm not going to do a few missions for a little while, I'm just going to go and cause chaos. I mean, it's the rocket launcher every single time. Oh,
do you remember using that, like, first-person view with that little square on the screen?
Yes.
That was horrendous, man.
I would steal a car and park it somewhere, and then steal another car and park it in front of that until you've got like maybe 20 cars all sort of piled up, and then just go mental with the rocket launcher. That was, I think that was kind of the open world fun of it. That you could do this stupid thing. Like it was like a violent version of Lego. I love that.
Mention that.
What were some of your guys' favorite cheat codes in this game? Because there were a ton. And, it wasn't just for weapons and stuff like that. There was a lot of different things you could do with these cheat codes. You could drive on water. You could make cars go invisible. You could cause a riot. You could just get something as simple as health, armor, and weapons, whatever you wanted to do. But it seemed like this game had a ton of variety for cheats.
Okay, I'm going to say something right now. Me and Liam were Puritans. We did not use cheat codes.
Puritans.
However, I really thought that I was cheating the system and myself, and I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror if I used cheat codes.
Not even for fun, like on rampages or anything?
I did for fun, but I would say, and Liam will remember this, we have a cousin who's also a big gamer, and he made the mistake of activating the riot cheat and then saving. So
oh yeah, because if
what
you saved,
happens-
there was no fixing
what
that.
he said, there's no saving it. So for the rest of his game, his own gang would attack him whenever they saw him. And so everyone, it made the game 10 times harder because now everyone's trying to hurt you walking down the street, including your own gang outside your mansion, because he made the mistake of saving the riot cheat. And I found that hilarious because he couldn't go anywhere. And so he's halfway through the game at this point. So he's at a crossroads now. Do you continue with this on your shoulders, or do you start again? And that was a precautionary tale for me. I thought, this is what happens when you cheat, man. It serves you right. So I thought, nope. If I do the weapon cheat, so I can, just burn some people with a flamethrower for an hour, fine. But when it came to the main mission, I couldn't even bring myself to do weapon cheat. I was that fastidious and anal about it. I couldn't do it.
The gold standard.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm sitting here thinking everyone's just gonna go, what, whenever you say that you don't use the cheats. But I was exactly the
What
same.
the hell is wrong with you people?
I mean, at least until the credits roll, you should not be putting a single cheat code in there. I'm a big believer in playing games the way that developers designed them to be played. That was their vision that they've delivered to you, and then you've kind of just jumped in and gone, oh, you want me to do this with an Uzi, do you? No, 10 tanks. Here's 10 tanks. And it's like, at least play it through once and play it the way it was meant to be played.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you there. I played it through because I think there was at least 2 years between Vice City coming out and San Andreas. I think San Andreas was out in about 2004. So obviously that leads to a lot of completion of Vice City. So I did it once through without cheats, and then a lot of times with and without cheats. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I think it's best to experience it because it's great to just have be fireproof. Like that's who wouldn't want that?
Right. Man, I cannot believe you guys didn't just play your whole way through cheating like, fucking skis bags. Because, man, I was all over, I think it was called Code Cracker, Game Shark guides and things like that. Sometimes I even remember printing off a piece of paper as a young child. I would go to the school library and print off cheat codes and bring them back home and be like, you know what? R1, R2, L1, R2, left down, right up, left down, right up.
That's the weapon cheat right there.
That's the weapon cheat. You still know it 20 years later. It's insane.
You still know it.
and there was the one to get that was useful as well, completing it a few times over. I think it was R2, R2, L1, R1, up, down, up, down, up, down, to get rid of the police. When you had 6 stars on
you, remove wanted level. Yeah.
Clean.
I can't remember what I had for dinner last night, and you guys are ramming off
20 years ago. This is insane. That's how it's just how fundamental those were with that game. To me, it was synonymous. There were so many others too that you could use. The flying cars. The controls were horrid, but still, if you wanted to just go down the strip and launch that sucker into the air, you could. I'm still shocked there was never a cheat code to swim. Because if you fell in that game, it was instant drown immediately. That was it.
Straight away.
This is a little bit off topic, but there was a cheat code on San Andreas that would let you on a BMX do a really high. If you pressed X, you do a little jump.
Yep.
And there's a cheat code on a BMX where you would do a jump and it would lead you. You'd be hundreds of meters in the air.
I remember that. That
was great, man. Because you'd get what I would do. I would get a BMX up to the top of a mountain and then go.
That was the thing to do, right? Was get that BMX bike to the top of the mountain and then just roll it off and see how fast it could go down the side.
Again, it's the ingenuity of Rockstar to have the imagination to do these madcap off the chain sort of cheat codes that have no purpose to the game. There was another cheat code where as soon as you triggered it, every vehicle within sight would blow up instantly. And I just thought this is technically kind of pointless I suppose you could use it in missions, but this doesn't need anything, but it just added another element of craziness and fun to the game. It's one of the few games that I can think of where there's a reason to play it when you completed it. And again, that's another thing. I lament that today with games. When you complete a game, when you finish it, when you platinum it 100% or, get all the achievements, you might not revisit that game unless you want to redo the story mode. But for GTA, you could put in just for an hour and be like, you know what, I'm just going to see how many stars I could do. Me and Liam used to do this a lot, how many stars we could get before we end up dying. That was a sort of, I'm sure loads of people made up this game for themselves, but that was a little mini game we played for ourselves. How many stars can you get, wanted level stars, before you end up dying?
And it was
you're not allowed
1
to use
through
the
6
cheats.
stars, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's you're right there, Aaron. That's how like anarchic the game could be. There was a cheat code to get the highest wanted level. There was a cheat code for that. It's like, why would you want to do that? To like for no reason have the army chasing you. It's like, well, why not?
So what? Oh, sorry, go ahead, mate.
I remember friends that they used to play it. So if you were around at your friends and you were having a few beers, obviously you guys weren't having beers when you were playing GTA.
I don't know, man. These rascals, I don't know.
But you're having a few beers and one person lifts the controller and they get their wanted rating up to 6. And once you hit 6, you pass the controller to the next person and they have to lose the wanted
Whoa,
level.
that is a
you know?
great game.
That's true.
And it's sort of, you're kind of making this sort of fun multiplayer experience, even though it's a single player game. That was fun.
Were you two as brothers on the one life rule? Because I've got 2 brothers as well, and we both played the hell out of the GTA games growing up. But did you have the rule in your household where if you got the one level up and you died, you'd pass it off? Because we would do that too, and sometimes I would just cheat and be like, that wasn't fair. I got robbed by the SWAT truck or the tank that hit me or whatever. I deserve another run at this game.
I don't think that is kosher one little bit, and I think you should be ashamed of yourself, in honesty. I think this is terrible. This is terrible. In fact, me and Liam were such Puritans. Maybe Wayne, you had the same thing. Not only did we not cheat, but we were this compulsive that if we died or failed a mission, we would reload. You know how sometimes you would die. Yeah, see, Wayne, I knew you'd be the same. So if you
100%.
died, you realize that, man, I died. I've lost all my weapons. I've lost money because you bribed the hospital, I suppose. So you've lost your weapons, your some money. Okay, forget that. I'm loading. I don't care. So yeah, these rules you see, Bernie, they're foreign to us.
Still to this day, I have not been able to break that habit in GTA games. GTA 5, see that bit, you die, and then you see him walking out of the hospital. I'm like, no. My character did not die.
Yeah.
Reload.
Reload.
Yeah, every time.
Truly the most civil of individuals.
And it would especially get to me as well. If you had, I don't know if you guys were anything like me, but I had a thing, because it was so 80s. I had all of my cars, like the Stinger, especially the Comet, I had them all sprayed pink. So I would be driving down the strip, and if I ended up dying, I mean, not only have you lost your money, your weapons and everything, but then it's also like, I really enjoyed that car. I had a bit of a connection with it because I remember getting it in that certain mission. And, oh man, I really want that back. Load, straight up, load.
Yeah.
No way.
That's. Do you remember the name of those stores where you went to repaint those cars?
Pay and Spray, was it?
Pay and Spray. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was the place. But there were so many different ones. You had the sports cars, you had the 4-wheel drive utilities, the 4 doors, the 2 doors, vans, huge industrial trucks, government cars. I mean, just about everything was out there, even aside from the aircraft, motorcycles, boats, things like that. But what did you guys, what were your go-tos on that? Because myself, if I saw a sports car or a sports bike, I was all over it. I mean, just top speed, that was the only way to go for me. It would be like a Comet or a Banshee or the Cheetah. I think the Cheetah was my personal favorite. The Infernus also, which was like the Lamborghini lookalike.
Yeah.
That was outside Gaz's mansion, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the Silver Infernus outside your mansion. That was my go-to, the Infernus, and also the PCJ 600 motorbike. Those are my 2 favorites, I think. Yeah, I did like the Comet though. I like the way it was like a Porsche style car. I like the way that handled, because sometimes the Infernus was so fast, you took a bad turn and your tailspin and you lose control fast. So I like the Comet. It was a closer drive to the road, so you had a bit more control over it. I really like those 3 cars, or bike as well.
Mine was a Stinger, always a Stinger. And if we're talking cheats, what it would be, a nice pink Stinger, and then if you had a little dent to it, or if someone clocked you from behind, because it's always their fault, it's never your fault. Someone clocked you, health cheat, nice and clean car.
Yeah.
It would be that.
The Stinger was like the convertible, right? Where it had it didn't have the top on it.
Yeah, the reason why I like that was because I always used to be in the Mr. Vercetti suit that you get at the strip club. So it'd be nice, the nice pinstripe pink suit, which looked incredible. And I'd always, the door would be shut, so jump into it. And I remember thinking, when I get older and I can get a car when I'm 17, I'm going to get that exact car and that exact suit and jump into it. And it hasn't happened yet. But
We're still taking the Metro. What about you, Wayne? Any favorite vehicles in that game?
Whatever was there. I really liked playing it in a sort of haphazard way where it really was, you were playing it as if you didn't have a plan and your plan went tits up. So, you know, rather than having the Banshee and being able to like zoom off away from the police, I liked having a real dodgy car that was, you know, top speed of 50 miles per hour. And I think it just made it a wee bit more chaotic. And I kind of liked playing into that, you know, as if you would come out of a heist and go, that car, that's the one, and just jumping into it and away you go, you know.
There are so many other. Oh, sorry.
also, I was going to say, did you guys ever realize when you would nick a car, if you got in the driver's side and there was a passenger in there, the passenger would still be in the car?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes they stay in there. You can hear them screaming.
They would just literally like scream the entire way unless
Yeah.
you like stopped and let them get out.
But sometimes
Yeah.
you'd stop and they wouldn't even get out. It's like you'd stop and they'd just be in the, and you'd look, first person, look in the car and they're just sitting there like that.
Do you remember ever trying to like get away from the police and they would like run up to you and like, I mean, the car like wouldn't get up to speed fast enough and they would just rip you out. Like, that's it. Bam.
What I used to like,
Wasted.
what I used to like, if you had a passenger that was still stuck in the car, is that they'd be screaming their head off. You pull over and let them out, and then they just casually walk away. Like they would just
Right.
strut away. And I'm thinking, make up your mind. You want to come back in? I don't know what's going on here.
Are you going to call the police or what? What happens here? There are so many other ones too. I remember there was the four-door. I don't remember the exact name of it, but it was like the one you would drive on like the sand or something like that. It was basically the equivalent of a Jeep, I guess you could call it. But
There was a BF injection.
was that what it was? Yeah.
I think it might have been that. Yeah, that was a really. Oh, I remember there was also a scrambler bike. So it was like a dirt bike, and there was a dirt bike course. You can do that as a race. I thought that was a really cool addition. So the scrambler bike, which was so hard to control, and you had to obviously do a dirt bike. I don't know if that was a mission. I think it might have been a mission, or it was just there as a little Easter egg that you could just complete. But either way, it was the typical racing in GTA where you had to get the checkpoints. So it was like a blue little half semicircle, and you had to just go through them in a certain time as, you know, gates on a track. But that was a really cool thing as well. So there was a BF injection, like a dune buggy sort of car. I think it was like a sand car, and also the scrambler, the little dirt bike. I thought those were two really cool things as well. I forgot about those.
That's funny you mentioned the dirt track because I remember there was also an arena mode in there where you could go through. There was like the demolition derby and different stuff like that. That was insane.
I forgot about that. That's so cool. Yeah.
I discovered that on that playthrough this past couple of weeks, and I was like, I forgot this thing even existed in the game, and I probably spent so much time in here just smashing up cars until like doors would fall off, or, you know, the hood of the car. Like, so many different things about those vehicles were destructive. It was just insane.
Yeah. Did you guys ever? There was a mission that took you there, and there was a way to actually get it out into the street if you got a golf caddy. And you sort of like there was a mission where you had to take someone out, and it was on the golf course, and they were in their little golf caddy.
That was horrible. That mission. Man.
There was a way to actually get the golf caddy out of the golf course, and you could just drive it around the street, and you'd realize just how whack that car was. So slow. People would be walking past you as you're just like nailing it to like 5 miles an hour. Terrible. Man.
Handling was horrendous on that too, because on that golf course, you would literally like just roll that thing for even like making a, I don't know, like 20-degree turn. It was horrid. Like,
And then you fall out and go, "Ugh."
yep.
Yeah, you'd fall out. Yeah.
If you fell out in the vehicles too, and they like, you know, they'd be upside down, they'd like immediately catch fire, right? I mean, you only had, this game gave you no forgiveness at all. You had like 2 seconds to clear out of that area, or you were just going to blow up in a ball of flames with that. And it wasn't even really a ball of flames. It was like a red, orange circle, you know, compilation that would happen because the graphics aren't good enough for a real explosion yet. But
What was that even about? Like, if a car's upside down, then it goes on fire and explodes.
I have no
for
idea.
no logical reason whatsoever.
Is that
It
still
was
a
just-
thing
I mean-
in GTA like 5? Like, do they still do that?
No, they took that out. You can roll the car and it'll just sit there on its head
It's
because
like the Canyonero
Yeah.
in The Simpsons. But it's like the good thing about Vice City is, again, what they improved from GTA 3. I know we keep on saying it, but it is really important. In GTA 3, you could not get out of a car if it was moving. So if your car was on fire and someone was
Yeah.
kept on ramming you from behind, you would die. whereas you could jump out of a moving car in Vice City. And I thought that was the biggest improvements for the game. The amount of times I got caught short and died because I'm in a car on fire and can't get out of it. And in Vice City, you could jump out of it while it was moving.
I remember doing
And
that
I
in
thought
Vice
that was
City.
really important.
I remember doing that, and I would jump out, and I would still get run over by like a cop chasing me or something. Like, so it almost nullified itself in that aspect. And I was like, well, why did I even jump out of this thing? Like, I guess I would have been better off exploding, but okay. There's nothing like
Yeah,
that.
Matt, if you use cheats.
Yeah, true.
I think how we feel. As soon as we die, that's it. Reload.
The Puritans over here have no choice.
Literally life or death. Yeah.
That's hilarious. I remember there was nothing as frantic as like seeing your car go from like the white smoke coming out of it after it's taken a good amount of damage or been banged up, and then the black smoke comes and you're like, man, I better not run into anything else, and then it finally catches fire, and you've only got that limited window to just get out and run. That was so good. There was so many other things about this game too. I mean, gosh, like that difficulty system we were talking about earlier. You start off at 1 star, and the cops are just kind of like, okay, whatever. They'll chase you, but they're not aggressive about it. They still shoot you at 1 star. They're like, they can't like apprehend you like a normal police officer at this point. They're just like, all right, shoot him. He's got to be gone. That's it. Kill him. Like they need to get up to what, 2 stars, and then you've got a little bit of a pursuit going on. They'll actually chase you a bit. They'll call in for backup. What were stars 3, 4, 5, and 6 like? I mean, I know it just went through the roof there.
I think 3 is when they got a backup, and also if you're in a car and you're in a chase, they use the stingers to blow your tires out. I think that was from 3 stars onwards.
Spike strips?
Yeah, and again, this wasn't a thing in a previous game, so now your tires could blow out. And that, again, we're going back to mechanics here, that really affected your driving. And so you lose speed, and your ability to steer really went haywire after that. So the amount of times I remember this happened to me a few times, you see the cops actually throw the spike strips onto the road, and so you can avoid them. So I remember I avoided them, go onto the pavement, run over a cop, killing him in the process. So then I get another star for my troubles. So I'm like, come on. So now I'm on to 4 stars. It's just from there. It's just, and losing stars is so difficult. You might find the odd star icon floating around, like health floats around in certain random areas. You might find the odd star which you lose a star rank, and so that helps you a little bit. But those are so few and far between that, yeah, if you got stars, it's very difficult to get rid of them, and you will die.
Then 4 was the, I believe, SWAT team helicopter combo. You might have got the helicopter at 3 as well. I can't recall. And then 5 was, I believe, the FBI. You had the black SUVs rolling at you.
Yeah.
And then 6 was just full on military. Like, here come the tanks. Here comes the army with their like barracks vehicles and stuff like that rolling out. That was terrifying.
You know what always kind of made me nervous with the 6 stars was because at 5 stars they'd be in, like cheaters, and they were, the proper FBI cheaters, and they would come zooming down. They make so much noise, and then when you got 6 stars, they would all just disappear, and it was always about 5 seconds of just weird silence. It was just really quiet. No one was about, and you just you look behind, oh my god, there's a massive tank.
It's the Rhino. Those tanks were beasts too, because if you even like, I don't know where this mechanic came from, but like if you even like barely nudged a car with that tank, they would explode on impact, like mercilessly. Like you didn't even have to shoot anything. It would just run into everything with the tank, and you're invincible at that point. It was like a Scorpion in Halo 1. You were dead if you tried to go up against that thing.
For the longest time, I thought that was real life. I thought that's what happened if you drove a tank. If you hit a tank with your car, you would then instantly blow up. For longer than I want to admit. And I thought, how has there ever been a war? How have there ever been a war that lasted more than a couple of hours? You just drive a tank and blow everything up, and then bang, war's over. We won, yay! It's just such a random mechanic to add in. It's like you smash into this, you will explode on impact, and you could get that bad boy up really fast if you spun the cannon around. So you shot the cannon as you were driving, and it would give you a real boost. It sort of propelled you. It was like a propulsion engine, and it was so cool. Because then if you're going at, I don't know, the speed of a cheetah would in a tank, forget it. I mean, you've already got 6 stars at that point. What's the worst that can happen?
What was really difficult was holding on to it, because I always tried to, especially in Sunshine Autos, because it had such a big, like, it had 3 big garages or so. So I always tried to get a tank, get a Rhino, and then keep it. So you'd have to find a way of keeping it, getting back to your hideout without getting killed, then getting it into the garage, getting out of the car, and then running back around without getting shot, then saving the game, and then still having those 6 stars. So that was real difficulty. But seeing on the HD collection, when I loaded up the other day, I saw that I still had that Rhino in there. So God knows when I did it, but I did it within the last couple of years. That was something.
That map had a ton of elements to it too. I know the map was segmented out. You know, you had the beach on the far right side of the map. You had, you know, the Miami Strip with the neon and all that stuff at the bottom right area, the lawyer's office, and then you had the downtown area in the top left. You had the big shopping mall and, you know, kind of suburban area at the top right. You had the nice islands in between, or pretty much luxury at that point, and then the bottom left, which was kind of a bad part of town, and then the airport, the military base, stuff like that. How did you guys go around that map, and what were like your favorite ways to go out and just kind of cause chaos if you were going to go on a rampage or something like that?
I always like to, if I was on the run, I would usually get the go-to bike would be the PCJ 600, and going from island to island, I would always go via Starfish Island. And what I really like to do, just for a little like mini game for myself, would be trying to drive the motorbike through the pedestrianized little part. So there was a little kind of archway, and if you were getting chased by police or whoever, they obviously weren't big enough. They weren't small enough, sorry, to get through that little aisle. So I'd just skim through the pedestrian bit and then just go and smash through. And by that time, then you're away, straight to the pay and spray, and then you're clear.
Yeah, there are so many different ways to cause chaos. And Wayne, I thought it was hilarious earlier how you touched on being able to like pile up cars and then just set off that chain reaction of you've got one that'll catch on fire, and then there's just a huge explosion of like 20 others that would follow sequentially.
Yeah, it was so fun. I mean, sometimes you'd be doing it to sort of kind of test the limitation of your PC, how many explosions can go off before my frame rate drops below 10 frames per second, you know?
Because it was only at like 20 to begin with.
Yeah, but that was a load of fun. I mean, talking about the map, to me, I can't think about Vice City without thinking about that big stretch of road that just runs along the beach. To me, that is just so iconic for that game. And as I say, you know, run up and down, doing wheelies. I think that was the first house you got. You had like a little apartment where you could save. I think that was facing out onto the beach. So that just sums up Vice City for me in my head.
I think the same for me. I remember the strip where Wayne's talking about when it would rain at nighttime, it would just reflect on the road as well. I'm a sucker for neon and stuff like that, and I just thought it looked so pretty and so cool. And considering, you know, this is that generation of consoles, PlayStation 2 graphics, you know, they weren't anything like what we're used to now, but it just, that attention to detail would make it so, like I said before, it was like being on holiday almost. You know, it's like, I want to go to the beach. Okay, well, you can't because you're 12 years old and you'll get school tomorrow and you're in London, you know. So that's the options we had as city rats. So I thought, okay, I'll just put on Vice City. And so that, I think I'm with Wayne. That's my favorite area, I think. I also like going to the different areas where there would be two gangs right next to each other. So the Haitians and the Cubans. I like starting a gang war between those two. You know, you sort of lure, you start a fight with, say, the Haitians, let them chase you and run into the Cuban area. And then all of a sudden, you started a gang war. One guy started a gang war between the Haitians and the Cubans, all for fun, and you just watch everything go on. Yeah, and they've always got exactly. They've always got the worst guns, so you can either just get your flamethrower and burn everyone, or just watch them kill each other.
My favorite thing to do was to try to break into the military base, which was like the hardest thing to do ever, because they would just completely obliterate you as soon as you cross that little gate. And I remember sitting at that gate, always like trying to like strategize a way to get in there. And, you know, like, oh, how can I get to the tank? Like, do I just run through here? Will they shoot me if I run out there in the open? Like, what's the best way to do this? And I would still die like almost every time. But I always enjoyed doing that. I always turned on the riot sheet because, you know, things would just go absolutely insane when that happened, along with the flying cars. So you like, you know, your car flies up in the air and you've got grenades and bombs and stuff going off below you, and people are just absolutely massacring each other like it's the Purge or something. It was just absolutely mental. There were so many ways to cause chaos in that game. What did you guys do when you weren't trying to cause chaos? Did you ever just like follow traffic like a, you know, good Puritan would? I know myself, if I wasn't busy killing people, I would hit those insane stunt ramps where, like right there in the beginning of the game, next to Ken Rosenberg's office, by that bridge and next to the river, you hit that ramp and it hits the slow mo, and you get cash based on how far you flew. I thought that was the coolest thing ever because I would hit those everywhere, even if it was like I was in a golf cart trying to cross the river and I knew I wouldn't make it. I'm still hitting that ramp.
I know how
Yeah,
dull this sounds, but I don't know anyone that hasn't played GTA and at least once decided I'm going to drive around at the speed limit and stop at red lights and just like drive like a normal person for 5 minutes. You just have to give it a go, and then eventually something snaps and you just murder everyone. But I think everyone's done that thing where they just try for 5 minutes to be a normal person in the world of GTA.
Yeah, I definitely gave that a go. In every GTA that I played, it was always, let's just see if I can function like a normal member of society in this chaos. And it would last, about 30 seconds. I'm playing a video game for a reason, because this isn't real life.
So we've talked about a lot of things so far. I mean, we've covered the story, the content, everything in between, from the soundtrack, the vehicles, the weapons, just anything that you could possibly think of GTA related. I know this has been such a good conversation, but I'd want to ask you guys on the way out, where would you like to see future GTA locations while we're on that subject? Because I know that's something that, you guys are in the UK, and personally, I know for me, I've always been like, man, I would love to see a GTA 5 in London. That didn't happen, obviously. Maybe GTA 6, but where would you want to see that series in the future?
Oh, that's a banger of a question, man.
Toughie, man. I mean, we've already had what? We've had GTA 3 in Liberty City, which was kind of like Chicago, New York City-esque, and then you've had this one obviously in Miami, in the 80s setting. You had 90s vibe, early 2000s San Andreas, which was kind of a mash of everything that was great. And then you had Liberty City again, which was basically a New York City recreation, and Grand Theft Auto 4, and then Grand Theft Auto 5, which was kind of everything. It looked like LA basically. So where would you want to see GTA 6?
I think there's clearly a tradition there that they have taken pre-existing settings and then made a fictional interpretation of that. I'd like to see them break out from that and just create something completely brand new, a new city unique to GTA. But on top of that, I'd also like them to take the time of it and completely shift. I would love to see a futuristic GTA in a brand new city. That being said, I think those things that I'm kind of going, this is what I want, are probably going to be delivered in Cyberpunk 2077 anyway. So, other than that, if they were sticking with the pre-existing real life world, I would love to see them do Tokyo, because we visited there at the tail end of last year, and I just think that would make for an amazing setting. And you've obviously got the Japanese mafia, the Yakuza or Yakuza, depending on how you want to pronounce it. The problem with that being that there's already a Yakuza series of video games.
I was going to
so
ask
it
if
might
you
be,
think that kind of like prevented them from doing
it
that,
might,
already having that out there. It's a
yeah,
good
they might
series.
be they're kind of treading on ground that is already established. So but those would be my two.
All right,
I
Aaron,
think
Liam.
a little bit contrary to yourself, Wayne. I think, as much as I'd be inclined to say London, I think London was done. They had the Getaway and the Getaway 2, which was set over here. So I think that would be a
There
bit
was
too.
GTA London as well, back when it was a
Yeah, the
2D
GTA
game.
one. Yeah, you're right. Before GTA 3. What I would like to see, there was a game, Mafia, which I played originally on PC and then the PS2, and that was set in around about the 50s. And I think that they could have the same sort of setup. I did like to see it a bit more like GTA 3, Vice City, San Andreas, rather than too open world, too hyper realistic like the current ones. But I think something along the lines of the 50s and 60s, because there's so much you could do again with things like vehicles, with soundtrack, and I'm maybe letting my own tastes and bias get in the way there. Like, I'm a big fan of 50s and 60s music, and they could just do so much with that. I'd like to see that. And yeah, I've got some fond memories of that game Mafia, which was set in that sort of time. So yeah, I think they could easily do something really worthwhile in that era.
A lot of interesting post World War elements. I think they could probably add in there,
Yeah.
just knowing Rockstar and how quirky they can get. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
What about you, Aaron?
I was speaking about post-war. I was thinking of, again, my biases and sort of preferences come into it. Going back to the motherland, if they did something, post World War One, Sicily would be I think be really interesting. That would be quite cool. I think the soundtrack would suffer as a result. So again, we can't envision GTA without soundtrack. I would think something like those halcyon cocaine times of LA in the 70s, when it was Led Zeppelin on the Strip and, the Eagles and all those crazy guys on the Sunset Boulevard. And, it was all cocaine and strippers and just before glam rock come in. LA in the 70s, late 70s, I think would be really cool. You'd get to enjoy the music, the best music of it, probably any era in the 70s. And also the amount of celebrities you could get on board with that for nostalgia reasons, because, this is when great films were being made. So they could tie that in somehow. I think it was such an exaggerated, hyper, saturated era that you could have a real fun time making a game in the 70s in LA or in the West Coast somewhere. That'd be really cool. I really can't imagine it anywhere else other than in America, if I'm honest though. I remember having a conversation about when each new Assassin's Creed would finish, you think, where should the next Assassin's Creed be? And they would announce, oh, the next one's going to be in London, the next one's going to be in Egypt. And so you're like, oh, okay, that's really cool. So I think it's the same with GTA. I think I don't think you're going to have as much of an immersive world if you incorporate modern day stuff like having a mobile phone and being on social media and stuff like GTA 5 did. So I think, in Vice City, you had your mobile, you pressed L1 to answer the phone, and that was pretty much it. So I think it will allow you to be more immersive if you're left to your own devices rather than having all these contemporary things that I at least want to escape in life when I play video game anyway, So I think something in the 70s would be really cool in LA.
How about that? So that's some differences there. It'll be interesting to see when Grand Theft Auto 6, if it ever comes out, or when it's announced, and where that setting ends up being. I know, again, there's so many locations, and it sounds like we've got a lot of different interests here all over the world. So that will be neat to see. But anyways, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, whether you are driving, flying, you're at the gym, wherever you may be listening to us. Thank you again for your time. Don't miss an episode for us. It helps us to leave a like, subscribe, leave a review as well. That definitely helps us, and it goes a long way. We love to engage with our listeners, so feel free to send us an email. We've already got a few, and I think we're going to keep compiling those, and we're going to start asking some of these questions at the end of episodes, but feel free to keep sending those over to gamesaverschannel@gmail.com. And again, sometimes we'll try to answer those questions live at the end of our final segment on normal episodes. Next week, we've got the preview coming up, or sorry, not the preview. We've got the news edition coming up of the state of the industry, where we're about 2 weeks away from the next gen console launches. So we'll talk about all the latest happenings there. Feel free to give us a follow on social media as well at facebook.com/GameSaversChannel. You can find us anywhere you have social media. Just go there. It'll redirect you to all the other links you want to find for us. You can find our website on gamesavers.com. Gamesavers.podbean.com. Thanks to Podbean for hosting us. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, plus Alexa on Amazon, and so many more. But before we wrap things up, Liam, Aaron, where else can we find you guys?
So you can find me. I'm on Instagram as a writer. So that's Liam_Gamma, GAMMA. I'm out there just promoting some of my writing work, including a novel that I've written and self-published. So yeah, if you want, feel free to check that out. That's available on Amazon, amazon.com.co.uk, pretty much throughout the world, digital or paperback in selected countries that Amazon ships to.
And that's the title of that book is Lip Gloss,
that's
correct?
Lip Gloss, yeah, that's right.
Excellent. All right. And be sure to check that out, everybody. Again, that's amazon.co.uk, Lip Gloss. Check it out. Get it on hard copy. Get it on digital. It's an interesting read. I think you're definitely going to love what you see there. Aaron, Wayne, any last words here for you as well?
Yeah, you can also meet Liam in the band if you like speaking about the music in Vice City. I think our music wouldn't be lost on a Vice City soundtrack, so give us a listen to. We're Space Coast on YouTube, so have a look for us. We're going to be adding some more stuff. and updating some more stuff soon. So yeah, give us a check out. And yeah, if you like any of the Vice City music, fancy something listen to when you're driving down Ocean Beach, maybe give Space Coast a go.
Go check them out, ladies and gentlemen. Space Coast, you heard it. Wayne, where else can we find you?
At the minute, nowhere, just here. Everything else is dead.
I like your style, man.
Find the cave people on our podcast. All right. So that wraps it up. Thank you very much, everybody, today for joining us. Again, if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to like, subscribe, leave a review, and don't forget to save your game.